off at number 10, Ghost of Stowe Lake. San Francisco's Golden Gate Park is home to one of the city's most famous ghosts. Stowe Lake is said to be haunted by the spirit of a woman who, after attempting to save her child, who fell in the water, drowned in the lake. Legend says that this woman, referred to as the White Lady, wanders the edges of Stowe Lake as she searches for her child. She can even be summoned by visitors. It's said that the most active area surrounding the lake is near the Pioneer Woman and Children's statue. Ghost seekers can summon the woman by calling out, White Lady, I have your baby," 3 times. If she believes you, the woman will appear before you and will ask for her baby back. The legend bewars both skeptics and believers from doing this, because if you tell her you have her baby, the woman will haunt you for the rest of your life. If you tell the woman you don't have her baby after summoning her, legend says she will drag you into Stowe Lake and you will suffer the same fate she did in the lake. Now at number 9, the Dark Watchers. This legend takes place in the Santa Lucia Mountains, which run from Avila Beach to Monterey. The Dark Watchers are said to be giant phantoms that resemble humans and lurk inside the mountain. Legend goes that the Dark Watchers can only be seen at midnight, as they stand at the mountain's tops. They've only been claimed to be seen staring out into the wide space below the mountains, before completely vanishing into thin air. Coming in at number 8, Monster of Elizabeth Lake. Elizabeth Lake in California is said to have an evil presence below the water's surface. Elizabeth Lake is just outside Lancaster in LA. It's said to have been created by the devil himself to keep his hellish pets. The urban legend says that the passageway to hell can be found if you swim deep into the lake. The first sighting of the monster of Elizabeth Lake dates back to 1880. The monster is said to have the neck of a giraffe, head of a bulldog, bat wings, estimated to be about 50 feet long, and smells of decay. Sightings of the monster of Elizabeth Lake continue to be reported and strike fear in the locals. Here at number 7, the hauntings of Turnbull Canyon. In the Puente Hills Preserve near Witter Turnbull Canyon is a popular hiking site in the preserve. It was previously referred to as Harakanuga, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, which translates to the place of the devil. According to the legend, the region is haunted by the Indians who were executed for not converting to Catholicism. Their spirits are believed to be lingering inside the depths of the canyon, waiting to get out. Many years later, Turnbull became the site of numerous satanic rituals held by people who mysteriously disappeared. What was left behind from the rituals were paranormal sightings and occurrences, reported by both locals and freaked out hikers. Taking number 6, the Billywhack Monster. Rumors of an alleged beast have been going on around since the 1940s at the site of the former Billywhack Dairy in Ventura County. August Rubel, a German national living in the United States during World War II, owned the dairy. It was rumored that August had a secret underground lab beneath the dairy, where he was working with the US government to build a super soldier for war. He returned to Germany in 1943 as he was supposedly working for the Allies. During the trip, August allegedly stepped on a German landmine and passed away. Years later, reports of a strange creature roaming the area where the now abandoned dairy stood started to surface. Many of these reports came from local high school students who told police that a large humanoid with goat-like horns and sharp claws was hurling rocks at their car. Halfway at number 5, Alcatraz Demon. San Francisco's Alcatraz Island has plenty of ghosts and disturbing rumors about its former inmates, one of which is the Alcatraz Demon. The story is that a prisoner was ranting about a demon in his cell. The guards ignored his cries, knowing that many of the prisoners were mentally ill and prone to seeing things. The next morning, the prisoner was found strangled in his cell, with no evidence or means that someone else had been in or out of the cell. There were also a lot of other ghost stories surrounding Alcatraz. Here at number 4, the Hollywood Sign Spirit. This is probably one of the most infamous urban legends in California. The Hollywood sign is said to be haunted by the early 1900s actress Peg Entwistle. When a possible career-ending review was published about one of her films, Peg climbed to the top of the sign's H and jumped off of it. She is said to haunt the sign and the surrounding area. The legend continues to state that she will appear to people hiking to the off-limits part of the sign where she had taken her life. Instead of the sweet Hollywood actress, what appears to these unfortunate people is a woman with a skeletal face and deep hollowed-out eyes. If those hikers are alone, she is said to somehow influence them to share her same fate. Now at number 3, Ghost Hills. Basic laws of gravity state that what goes up must come down. While in California, there are spots that are rumored to defy this basic truth. If you park at the base of a hill in a specified location and release your parking brake, your car will roll uphill. These spots are hard to find but are often accompanied by a legend as its explanation. A school bus broke down and the kids jumped out to push it up the hill, but lost control and the bus ran over them, taking their lives. Now they push cars up hills as ghosts. Here at number 2, Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer is a serial killer who operated in Northern California in late 1960s. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 known victims in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969, operating in rural, urban, and suburban settings. 2 of his attempted victims fortunately did survive. The Zodiac himself, however, claimed to have taken the lives of 37 victims, and he has been linked to several other cold cases, some in Southern California or outside the state. The Zodiac made the name for himself in a series of taunting letters and cards that he mailed to regional newspapers, threatening execution sprees and bombings if they were not printed. Some of the letters included cryptograms or ciphers, in which the Zodiac claimed that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. Of the 4 ciphers he produced, 2 remain unsolved, and only 1 was cracked in 2020. The Zodiac stopped written communications around 1974. The unusual nature of this case led to the international interest that is sustained throughout the years. The case also still remains open in the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa County and Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac since 1969. Although in late 2021, a team of specialists who investigate cold cases say they identified the Zodiac Killer as Gary Francis Post, who passed away in 2018. The team's years of digging uncovered new forensic evidence and photos from his darkroom. One image features a scar on the forehead of Gary's that matches a scar on the sketch of the Zodiac. It's insane that he stopped communication in 1974 and passed away in 2018, but they only identified him last year. Coming in at number 1, the Charman. The Charman's origin story is quite gruesome. A father and son were both caught in a house fire and horribly burnt in 1948. After the fire, the son became so mentally unstable that he executed his father. When the police found the son, he was so unrecognizably burnt, they didn't realize he was alive. So he ran away before they were able to arrest him for what he did to his father. The story goes that ever since then, the Charman can be spotted wandering the woods surrounding Ojai, occasionally approaching tents of innocent campers or pretending to be a hitchhiker and then attempting to attack them.
Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have the 13 Steps to Hell. Built in 1901, the Maltby Cemetery in Woodinville, Washington is said to be one of the go-to cemeteries if you want to experience some sort of supernatural activity. The most famous legend about the cemetery is the story of the 13 Steps to Hell. And I know how that sounds. The stairs appeared to lead nowhere and descended into the ground as they are located in the center of a cemetery. They allegedly led to an underground family tomb. Even though you were only a few feet away, it was said that when you went down the stairs, you abruptly lost your ability to hear anything above you. It is said that if you turn around and face the bottom of the stairs, you could catch a glimpse of hell itself. Local lore claims that occasionally people would descend down these stairs and just never come back. Even though the steps were removed many years ago, there are still stories concerning them. At number 9 spot, we have the Caddy of Cadborough Bay. Wait, did you think we could escape the Loch Ness Monster? Cause we really can't. There's one in every single state, and for Washington, they have the Cadborosaurus, nicknamed the Caddy. It is said to be a 20-foot long serpent creature that inhabits the northern part of the West Coast. It's described as having the head of a horse and the body of a very large eel. Eyewitnesses reports have been coming in for the past 200 years with 300 different sightings. Even the Inuit people drew this creature on their canoes in hopes they would ward it off once they entered into the water. As with all these Loch Ness Monster hypes, many people claim to have found and captured it, but eventually it gets to the point when you can't even tell what's real and what's fake. At number 8 spot, we're the Black Cat of Stevens Hall. Built in 1895 in Pullman, Washington, the Stevens Hall was once praised as the quote, most famous attractive building on the campus. But once people stepped foot inside, they took back these claims. Kind of like when you meet someone who is physically attractive, but has a terrible personality. This is that place. It started as a hangout spot for students at Washington State University, and here they would dance, drink, and tell stories to one another. One famous story told at the hall was Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat. It was read on Halloween every single year until one year the students believed the story had come to life. Eventually, many would see sightings of a black cat inside of the Stevens Hall. Then on one Halloween, the black cat stood in front of the house's mother's door, and when the students opened the door to see what the black cat was hiding, they found that a girl had passed away, and many believed it was caused by this black cat. At a number 7 spot, we have the Iron Goat Trail. In 1893, a railroad was constructed across the Cascades of Washington. This would be great news because it would finally mean that Seattle would be connected with the Midwest and many other states. Except once trains started to use this railroad, they ran into many problems. To begin with, trains with engines on each end had to struggle up switchbacks to reach the summit. And the worst part about this place was that since it was in the mountains, snow could reach up to 25 feet high in some places, which would have hundreds of people digging out the snow in order for the train to go through. Then in February 1920, the deadliest avalanche in American history hit the railroad. It derailed trails and killing a total of 96 people in the process. And at the time, the rescue mission was nearly impossible due to the extreme weather conditions present on the mountain. Now many hikers come across the area where the accident occurred, and many find themselves leaving immediately the moment they get there. This is because some hikers have reported hearing noticeable screams coming from the tunnels, while others have spotted the apparitions of men screaming for help. All of these components make this place one of Washington State's most haunted places. At number 6 spot, we have Port Townsend, Washington. Considered to be one of America's most haunted cities, Port Townsend definitely has a dark history to back up that claim. The thing about this place is that paranormal activity isn't in a single building or two, but they say that the spirits roam freely around the town, and there's not a place in town where you won't have the chance to see a ghost. For example, the Manresa Castle located in the city was once visited by ghost adventurers, and they supposedly captured children's laughter on film, as well as feeling as though something or someone was pressing against them the whole time. Then we have the Palace Hotel, which used to be known as the Palace of Suites due to the woman who used to live there. But many visitors claim these women never left. They say a woman in blue exposes herself to guests and staff members, while the other spirits try to play pranks on the other people. In the hump of our list, we have the Maury Island incident. Weeks before the infamous Roswell accident, Red Chrisman and Harold Dahl had their own encounter that shocked many people at the time. It all started on June 24, 1947, when pilot Kenneth Arnold claimed to see a string of 9 shiny unidentified flying objects traveling around 1,200 miles per hour near Mount Rainier. Many people have said they have seen the UFOs flying as well. Eventually, the story would be relayed to Red Chrisman and Harold Dahl, who both claimed to have fragments from the supposed UFO. When they interviewed Harold, he would go on to say, quote, "On June 21st, 1947, in the afternoon around 2 o'clock, I was patrolling the east bay of Maury Island. I, as captain, was steering my patrol boat close to the shore of the bay of Maury Island. On board were 2 crewmen, my 50-year-old son, and his dog. As I looked up from the wheel of my boat, I noticed 6 very large donut-shaped aircraft. Eventually, the FBI started to investigate and stated this incident was a hoax. But who knows? This really wouldn't be the last time the US government was hiding UFOs. At number 4, we have the infamous Bigfoot. Yes, the hairy creature had to make its way onto this list simply because this is the state where it was first documented and popularized. To this day, this is the state where the most sightings are recorded, so it's either everyone is lying in Washington or they may actually have a Bigfoot in their woods. Bigfoot has gained worldwide attention, but for those who don't know, they're basically 7 to 8 feet tall hairy humanoids with extreme strength. To this day, the search for Bigfoot is still a mystery, and there hasn't been solid evidence to prove the general public that these beasts actually exist. But hey, if you live in Washington, you have the best chance of actually discovering one, but that outcome would probably be a lot more different than you would think. At number 3 spot, we have Tacoma Old City Hall. Serving as City Hall in the early 20th century, this 10-story clock tower is haunted by a single prankster ghost named Gus. Many don't know the origins of this ghost, but it was said that he may have been a former criminal that was held in the building's Old City Jail and even passed away there. So as I mentioned, this building served as City Hall until 1957. This was a time when the City Hall was being neglected, no maintenance, and no payments. So eventually the building was too unsafe to work in, causing everyone to be kicked out. Nowadays, visitors of the old City Hall claim that prankster ghosts have taken over the entire building. For example, Gus is known to toss objects in the air at random. He's also known to turn on lights on and off, and sometimes he would completely shatter light bulbs. At one point, the sightings were so frequent, the police believed it was a person trespassing the property. But after further investigation, it was discovered that no one was trespassing the property. At a number 2 spot, we have the Kells Irish Pub. Considered to be a family-friendly bar/restaurant, the Kells Irish Restaurant and Time pub is said to be one of the most haunted eateries in the entire nation. To start, the pub is located in the Butterworth building, which was a former mortuary. So you kind of know where this story is going. This would basically mean that the entire building was used to store deceased bodies. Throughout the years, many spirituals have been brought to the Butterworth building in an attempt to initiate meaningful communication with the alleged spirits who remain there, including both a Catholic priest and a voodoo priestess. Nowadays, visitors report sightings of a ghost of a young girl dressed in a scarlet velvet dress. Others have spotted the ghost of an older man named Charlie, who would appear at random throughout the entire building. At number 1 spot, we have Mount Baker Theater. Opening up in 1927, the Mount Baker Theater in Bellingham was haunted from day one. Unidentified sounds, chilly spots, strange disembodied voices, balls of light, and even the odd apparition are just a few of the stories that have been noted here. As well, many visitors have reported the ghost of a young woman named Judy. It's said that she has crushes on male visitors and will choose to usher them into their seats if she does have a crush on them. People know it's Judy when they begin to hear their name across the floor and feel as though someone is touching them on the back or their shoulders. Another spirit trapped in this place is a cat that is found in the basement of the theater. Many claim that whenever they go to the basement and they catch a glimpse of this cat, something bad is bound to happen, as with many other black cat theories. Oddly enough, Mount Baker Theater keeps a ghost light on stage during the off hours, claiming that they ward off the evil ones from the theater, but who really knows if it works like they say they do. At number 10 spot, we have the Haunted Igloo Hotel. Located in Cantwell, Alaska, is one of the most unique hotels you'll ever see. However, can we call it a hotel if it's never officially been opened up to people? I guess not. Well, sometime in the 1970s, a man named Leon Smith began the construction of this building. His original plan was to make it a never-before-seen hotel, but over the years, it never managed to open due to various code violations. For example, they had undersized windows, which didn't even meet the requirement of the state. And in the end, the building was too big to demolish, so it just stood there for the next 4 decades. Now, apart from this hotel looking pretty eerie, what makes it so scary? Well, because this is an area notorious for grizzly bear attacks, and many have been reported in the area surrounding the hotel. But what makes many stray far, far away is that some have said they saw a woman in white who haunts the ruins. She can be seen looking out of the windows and sometimes by the entrance. At our number 9 spot, we have the Baggage Towers. Before you arrive in Whittier, Alaska, you must go through a long, narrow tunnel, and when you get out, the place already has this creepy atmosphere. However, as you drive down this town, one building may stand out to you, and that's the Baggage Towers. At one point, this building held the entire population of the city, all while being used for other public facilities such as stores and even churches. They eventually gave it the nickname, the town under one roof, and it just makes sense. With everyone in the town being under the same roof, it was bound to happen that some restless spirits stayed in the building as well. And at one point, residents of the building reported a strange, dark, shadowy figure walking and even crawling around the hallways late at night. In the rooms, they would hear strange voices coming from dark places telling them just to come closer. And one notorious spirit that most residents know is the man that could be heard whistling across the building. Now locals claim that it's even worse when snowfall hits because it just forces them to stay trapped inside of this supposed haunted building. At number 8 spot, we have Badarka Road. Many say this road exists, while others claim it was completely made up, but what could be true is the terrifying stories attached to this road. Apparently located in Chudjik is a road known to be haunted by a man and his young daughter. This is all because they lost their lives on this road and have never been put to rest. Story goes that a man and his 5-year-old daughter decided to drive down this stretch of road in order to gather firewood for their cabin that was nearby. When they stopped, the father grabbed his axe and proceeded to chop down a tree. When he was on to his next tree, he wanted a small break, so he kept his axe lodged into the tree. However, when he turned his back, his daughter wanted to impress him and she took out the axe, which caused the entire tree to fall on top of her, killing her instantly. The father was so distraught and just sat there with her lifeless body until he passed away from hypothermia. Now, if you happen to find this road and drive down it around 3 AM, you may catch the father holding his bloody daughter asking for a ride. At number 7 spot, we have Chased by a UFO. On November 17th, 1986, Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 was making a trip from Paris all the way to Narita, which is really close by to Tokyo, Japan. It was a pretty normal flight until they made it over eastern Alaska. This is when the crew began to spot 2 unidentified flying objects close by to their left side. They described the aircrafts having 2 rectangular arrays, which is probably their thrusters. And when these aircrafts got too close, the pilots of the Japan flight noted that they could feel the heat on their face. One of the aircrafts appeared to be twice the size of the cargo flight, and they said it kind of looked like a mothership of some sort. The pilots tried to do evasive maneuvers in order to avoid these UFOs, but they still continued their pursuit for little under an hour. Once the two aircrafts left the plane alone, a third one came out of nowhere and began to trail them. The pilots decided to contact air traffic control to identify the aircraft, but nothing could be distinguished. After the end of the 3-month investigation, they concluded that there wasn't enough material for proof, although they'd accepted the descriptions that the crew had left them. So this still remains unsolved, but who knows what the crew actually saw. At our number 6 spot, we have Scary Mary. One of the most famous legends told to many Alaskans is the story of Scary Mary. The story begins in the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, which occurred between 1896 to 1899. One day, a young beautiful woman named Mary came to the Golden North Hotel in Skagway with her fiance. They loved each other, and by the first day in the hotel, they had already made plans to marry one another. So the fiance decided to go off and get a fortune in the gold fields. However, as time went by, the man never ended up returning. Throughout this whole time, Mary was patiently waiting for his arrival back at the hotel. But at one point, she decided to lock herself in the room, knowing her fiance was probably never going to return. After another week, the hotel keepers decided to break down her door, only to find her deceased body while wearing a wedding dress that was meant for her wedding day. Now visitors tell us that she hasn't ever checked out at the hotel. People walking outside claim to see a pale figure wearing a wedding dress looking outside of the windows, while others claim to see her on the ceilings looking down at them when they're sleeping. In the hump of our list, we have the Eldred Rock Lighthouse. Right off of Alaska's coastline is a small island notorious for the disasters that happened around it. This is the Eldred Rock Lighthouse in Haines Area, Alaska. The lighthouse stood strong for over 100 years, but it has been haunted ever since its construction. During the 1896 gold rush, many steamboats were bringing gold miners across the body of water that surrounds the lighthouse, and unfortunately, many of these ships didn't survive the journey. The most famous wreck was during February 1898, when the steamship named the Clara Nevada hit the rock with as many as 75 lives being lost. Ever since that disaster, the island has been haunted by the souls of the Clara Nevada. All the lighthouse keepers report the feeling of being watched when they go out on a nighttime walk, and some have even claimed to see shadowy figures peeking out of the water near the coastlines. At number 4 spot, we have University of Alaska Poltergeist. The University of Alaska's Wendy William Auditorium seems to be a notorious place on campus for having a few of their own poltergeists. One of these being John Wendell Wendy Williamson himself. He was a former music professor who used to teach at the school, and students and staff members nowadays claim his spirit still lives in the room, since a lot of overnight staff will catch music being played in the auditorium only to find out that no one is in the whole hall. Psychics and other paranormal investigators have gone to the auditorium and said there are 5 other entities inside. These include a shadowy man seen in the backstage, an aggressive man who picks on brunettes, a teenage guy who is very welcoming, and a white lady who used to be a former student, and alongside a little girl that can be heard giggling during the lectures. Just imagine, you pay thousands of dollars to go to school only to be haunted by a family of ghosts. At number 3 spot, we have the Qualupalik. The legend of the Qualupalik comes from the Inuit people and their icy Arctic waters. They're actually somewhat considered mermaids, but unlike any other regular mermaid, there is nothing attractive about this creature. These creatures are often depicted as having fins that jut out of their heads, backs and arms, and their webbed feet and hands are topped with long sharp claws. All of this is enough to strike tears into the hearts of the children that the Qualupalik preys upon. Only these children will catch a glimpse of their face, which resembles a woman's face that has turned green and bloated from rotting and being under the sea for a long time. Those who have sighted this creature report that they can only be seen for an instant before they are completely gone, but the children victims of this creature would not be so lucky. Their ways of killing involve leaping out of the water, sinking their sharp claws into your flesh, and dragging you into the water to drown you. At number 2 spot, we have the Alaskan Triangle. We all know about Bermuda's Devil Triangle that consumes ships and planes alike, but Alaska has their very own as well. The triangle connects from Alaska's largest city of Anchorage to Juneau in the southeast and Barrow in the north. Similar to Bermuda's Triangle, over the past 50 years, over 20,000 people and several planes have gone missing in this area. The mystery of the disappearance is inconclusive, but many of the surrounding indigenous tribes claim that restless demons and trickster spirits lure people to an icy death. Some say there's even a shape-shifting demon called the Kushtaka that inhabits the forests of the Alaskan Triangle. He is described to approach those who are lost or weak, and once your trust grows with them, they will drag you deeper and deeper into the wilderness and tear you limb for limb, preventing your soul from ever reincarnating. In other words, there's not much to do here other than being lost and potentially encountering this bloodthirsty creature. All the way at our number 1 spot with the Iliamna Lake Monster. Lake Iliamna is located in a very remote region of southwest Alaska Alaska. And when I say remote, I mean it, because in order to get to this lake, you must either go by boat or one of those float planes. It also happens to be the largest lake in Alaska and the second largest in the entire US, so best believe this large body of water has more than a few creatures lurking its depths. Native stories speak about a large aquatic creature that has been the reason for many deaths around the area. Those who have seen the beast have said it ranges from 10 to 30 feet in length with a square-like head. It's so powerful, it's said that it attacks small boats off of blunt force alone, meaning it'll ram its head onto the boat until it completely destroys it. The natives call the creature a Gonagadet, which is depicted as a fish god, or some consider the monster to be a Jig-ik-nak, which are these fish-like monsters that travel in groups to attack canoes and even kill warriors. At a number 10 spot, we have the Night Marchers. According to Hawaiian lore, the Night Marchers were an ancient Hawaiian warriors in their past life, but their spirits march the island carrying torches now. But don't worry about hiding from them, because you'll definitely hear them well before you see them, as they play a distinctly loud drum while they march. They're believed to be stuck on the island for many different reasons. Some of the claims are they are looking to reclaim rightful territory or avenge a battle they had previously lost. These spirits are not entirely evil, but they do demand respect. For example, if you are unfortunate enough to cross paths with them, try your best not to interrupt. And I'll stress you not to look into their eyes, as you will meet your doom from even one glance from these warriors. Since they are ghosts, nothing can stop them from their path, not even buildings. So when you see them, do exactly this. Or another option is to lie down on the floor, but wouldn't you think that walking away is a better option? No? Anyone? At a number 9 spot, we have Morgan's Corner. This one takes place in the island of Oahu and is one of the most grisly murders on this list. Morgan's Corner got its name from a doctor who happened to live at this particular bend of the road. Then in 1948, it claimed that a couple of prisoners escaped the local prison and broke into a house looking for any sort of supplies. They broke into the home of 68-year-old Therese Wilder, who was below the home of Dr. James Morgan. They gagged her and later took her life by means of suffocation. Even though both of these criminals were caught and sent to jail, many say her screams for help can still be heard to this day. At number 8 spot, we have Pele, or the goddess of volcanoes, or she goes by another name called the woman who devours land, but I think that's a little bit too aggressive. It's said in Hawaii that every time a volcano erupts, it resembles Pele's longing to be with her true love. Her story varies, but the most popular rendition talks about a girl born in Tahiti who was sent away from her father because of her difficult temper and seducing her sister's husband. After leaving, she would encounter her sister once again, who took her life out of pure rage. This is when Pele became a full-fledged god before finding her home on a Hawaii island. Now it's said that if you remove the lava rocks on her island home, you will suffer years and years of bad luck and misfortune. And to this day, thousands of lava rocks are sent back to Hawaii due to people experiencing said bad luck. At number 7 spot, we have the Green Lady of Wahiawa. According to Hawaiian lore, a lady and her child would go to this botanical gardens often. Instead of taking their usual route on the bridge to go home, they decided to take the gulch because she feared of her children being struck by a car, since there was a fair amount of cars on the road at the time. When they took the gulch at night, the complex terrain separated the two, and the woman would end up losing her daughter. She looked everywhere in the ravine, but as nothing popped up, she went to the townsfolk for assistance, but no one wanted to help as it was very late at night. As she went back to look down once again, she ended up going missing as well. Now it's believed that she still roams the gulch covered in moss and vines with a distinct decaying smell, which is the reason why she is considered the Green Lady. She supposedly snatches children she finds in the area to fill the void she had from losing her daughter. And she's also spotted at the local elementary school acting as a mother picking up her own child. At a number 6 spot, we have the Koniana Cave. The Koniana Cave is located at the base of a cliff along the Farrington Highway of Oahu. The cave formed over 150,000 years ago. According to Hawaiian legend, Koniana Cave is home to the underground shark god Nanaue, the son of Komahoali, or the king of sharks, the most sacred brother of the fire goddess Pele. Nanaue was born with a mouth on his back and his mother never fed him meat, but when he was 7 he accidentally ate one and slowly would become this shark-like humanoid with razor-sharp teeth and gills. He had an appetite for human flesh after that and would use his cave as a lair until one of the day a group of villagers came down and hunted him down for good. Now it's said that if you see an elderly Hawaiian man cooking meat near a cave, it's actually the spirit of Nanaue. In the hump of our list, we have the faceless ghost of Wale Drive-In Theater. Supposedly at the Wale Drive-In Theater, there is a faceless ghost of a woman who stands near the lady's bathroom combing her hair. When you get too close to her, she will toss her hair to the side to reveal her perfectly featureless face as smooth as polished stone. The drive-in is supposedly haunted by these ghosts because it was built to an old cemetery in Kahala, which has since been torn down and transformed into commercial and residential buildings. Reports of the faceless woman began on May 19, 1959, when the person who first spotted her was hospitalized after a mental breakdown. This would become big in local news, and many would come to the theater in hopes to experience this tragedy. After, many women would be found unconscious on the restroom floor who were said to be approached by the faceless woman. At our number 4 spot were the menehune. These Hawaiian mythical beings are said to be located deep within the forest of the island. These 3-foot tall beings are said to be experts at building, where legends say that they would build temples, fish ponds, roads, and even homes for the Hawaiians. According to lore, if you interrupt them when they are working, they will vanish out of thin air, but in some rare cases they come back to you with only negative intentions. A story goes that a group of teens went on a beach to have a bonfire. When they arrived, they noticed an odd looking shrine, but as they focused more on it, they noticed these little faces and shadows of little people in the forest behind it. Scared by this, the teens decided to find offerings to give to the shrine. One teen came out of the forest with an apple, running, after a group of menehune started to circle him. All the teens managed to escape, but this incident remains a reminder not to mess with these beings. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the Ilonani Palace. From scary sounds to unexplained apparitions, Inulawi Palace reigns high with paranormal activity. Built in 1882, the meticulously restored palace was once home to Hawaii's last ruling royalty, King Kalakaua, and his sister Queen Lilikuali. She was imprisoned in the palace within her bedroom for 8 months following the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. Although the queen physically passed away in 1917, it's believed that her spirit, along with a few others, are still roaming the halls of the royal home. Visitors on tours and security guards on duty have reported hearing footsteps, smelling the scent of burning cigars, and seeing the silhouette of a woman standing in the window of what was once the queen's bedroom. At number 2 spot, we have the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport. This international airport, located in Honolulu, is considered one of the most haunted airports in all of America, and for good reason. The airport is said to be haunted by the Lady in Waiting, who is a blonde girl who wears a white dress and appears in areas where people aren't allowed. The story goes that a woman fell for a man who pledged to marry her, but at a random turn of events, he took back his promise and vanished out of thin air. After she suspected the man left on a flight, she went to that airport and took her own life in one of the bathrooms. Now it's said that her spirit still remains in the airport, but is more prevalent in the bathrooms, with reports of her slamming the toilet seats and tugging on people's clothes. At the airport is said another ghost who is known for choking guests. It's said that this ghost sits on the chest of others and gives them the sensation of choking. Guess I'm taking a boat on my next Hawaii trip. At our number 1 spot, we have the ghost of Pearl Harbor. The Pearl Harbor incident was known as the reason for America's entry into World War II. This happened on December 7, 1941, when the Japanese led an attack to destroy as many military and civilian vessels in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This attack caused the casualties of around 2,400 US personnel, including 68 civilians, and damaged or destroyed 19 US Navy ships, including 8 battleships. It's said that the spirits of those who passed still remain on Pearl Harbor to this day. One of the ghosts that can be spotted on the grounds is the ghost of a man named Charlie. When heavy doors begin to swing back and forth, or lights being flickered on and off, everyone who works there just says, quote, "That's just Charlie," as if it was some casual thing or something. Don't know about you, but I would expect everyone who passed away from this attack to become malevolent ghosts in the future, but I guess this one just got tired of it all. As people approach the shrine built to commemorate the event, many claim to feel the instant feeling of sadness and a pain feeling. With the number 10 spot, we're the Goldfield Hotel. With a population of less than 300 people, this ghost town is bound to have something haunted within it. And guess what? It does. So this town got its name because it was discovered in 1902 because of a gold rush. As with many gold rush towns, when the gold went away, so did the people. Then in 1923, a fire engulfed the entire town, leaving the hotel standing alone. This hotel is now a symbol of what used to be, and many visitors claim that it's haunted by the former townsfolk. One of the most notorious spirits found in the hallways of the hotel is a woman named Elizabeth. Legend has it Elizabeth became pregnant with George Wingfield, which was one of the hotel's first owners' child. When he found out, he chained Elizabeth to a radiator in room 109 of the hotel. He supplied her with food and water until she gave birth. Some say Elizabeth passed away shortly after giving birth, and ever since you can hear a baby and a woman crying from room 109. At number 9 spot with the Clown Motel. If you have a fear for clowns, this motel is probably the last place you want to sleep at. This hotel has an obvious theme for clowns, and this was because the father of the owner was a clown collector and ended up being buried at the cemetery, which is located right beside this motel. Motel and cemetery, probably not the most appealing combination. Not only does each and every single room have all types of different clown decorations, but past owners and workers have claimed that it was haunted since the time it was built. They would recall hearing footsteps and voices coming from unoccupied rooms. Even on their website, they have different rooms and the spiritual encounters in each and every single one of them. Because of this, they have a disclaimer which reads, quote, "By visiting the Clown Motel, you acknowledge that you may encounter interaction with spiritual and or unexplained phenomena and or other unexplainable, unusual, or paranormal activity or interactions, which may include risk which may or may not be foreseeable. The Clown Motel will not be held liable for any bodily damage, injury, or personal property, emotional distress, death, or other harm caused by aforementioned." Many others have visited this hotel, and many other YouTubers have documented their trip, but you must be a clown to step into this one. Haha, no, anyone? No? Okay. At number 8 spot, we have the Lovelock Cave. Located in the middle of Churchill County, the Lovelock Cave is one of those discoveries that makes you question our history a little bit. In 1911, 2 miners were sent to this cave to search for bat guano, which is just bat poop for those who don't know. They would collect loads of this stuff, but eventually as they got deeper into the cave, they began to discover things like baskets, shoes, and even skeletons of humans. The craziest part about this is that it claimed that the skeletons of the humans were giants. I don't mean like 7 feet beings like Shaq, I mean like 10 to 15 tall beings. Local legend claimed that the local Paiute tribe was once at war with cannibalistic giants. The tribe was able to fight them back and trap the giants in this cave. They then filled the cave with deadly smoke to suffocate the rest of the giants in there. Even though bones have not been formally documented, it could be hidden from the public. Who knows? At number 7 spot, we have Tahoe Tessie. On the border of California and Nevada lies the beautiful Lake Tahoe. Legends from the Paiute tribe talk about a serpentine beast who lives in an underwater tunnel beneath that very caves. Then in 1959, a police officer named Mickey Daniels reported that something large rocked his boat while he was fishing with a friend at Lake Tahoe. And it was a cause of concern because his boat was 43 feet long. So something huge must have shaken it up. Except there's no sort of whales in Tahoe, so many claimed it was actually the beast Tessie. They believe Tessie to be around 80 feet long and to be as thick as a telephone pole. Many claim it has relations to the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, and if you see these two side by side, they honestly look like brothers. Regardless, just be wary of what lies underneath the depths next time you swim at Lake Tahoe. Sometimes the beauty in the area may be deceiving. At number 6 spot, we have Virginia City. So this whole city inside Nevada is considered to be haunted. Yup, a whole city. This place started off as a mining town and was one of Nevada's fastest growing cities, but in 1875 a fire engulfed everything within 9 hours, leaving more than 2,000 structures destroyed, hundreds homeless, and over 300 passed away. Now it's said that the spirits roam the entire town, haunting every single building within it. For example, the old Gold Hill Hotel is said to have the ghosts of children running the halls and scents of rose when spirits are nearby. The Silver Queen Hotel is allegedly haunted by one of the former workers. It's said that her spirit grabs people's hair and attempts to trip them down the stairs. Then in the St. Mary Arts Center, which was built in 1875, the same year of the fire, it's said that they offer paranormal investigations, including seances inside of the building. Right in the hump of our list, we have Bally's Casino and the MGM fire. Let's take a gamble and talk about the infamous fire that claimed the lives of many in the Las Vegas Strip. On November 21, 1980, in the world-renowned MGM Grand, a devastating fire engulfed the place, with it being the second largest loss of life hotel fire in the history of the US, with over 87 people passing away and 700 injured. During the fire, no alarms rang, and to make matters worse, sprinklers weren't even installed in all parts of the building. 8 months after, and the MGM Grand Hotel was rebuilt and reopened to the public. But ever since, visitors claim all sorts of paranormal activity. This includes ghostly apparitions on the same casino floor as the site of the fire, with some reporting that the ghosts are actually still gambling to this day, which is attributed to their last mortal moments before their passing. At number 4 spot, we have Area 51. Couldn't mention Nevada without Area 51. If you haven't been living under a rock, then you must know that this place is a potential alien hotspot. Many people believe this is a place where the government does secret tests with alien technology, and some claim that they keep aliens captive here. The most popular case was from Bob Lazar, who have claimed to work in Area 51 and said that he saw a UFO firsthand, describing it in very specific details. This led many to believe in his theory, and for probably forever, Area 51 will always be associated with alien activity until the US government tells me otherwise. At number 3 spot, we have the Flamingo Hotel. Until this violent murder 6 months after its opening in 1947, the Flamingo Hotel was the pride and joy of notorious mobster Bugsy Siegel. Siegel took over the final phases of construction and convinced more of his underworld associates such as Meyer Lansky to invest in the project. Siegel reportedly lost patience with the project's rising costs, and he once mentioned to the builder Del Webb that he personally killed 16 men on the job. However, some claim that he decided to stay indefinitely. Bugsy has allegedly been seen at the Garden Memorial, inside the wedding chapel, and roaming around the presidential suite, which still has the gold bathroom fixtures from his original room. Guests in his suite have reported hearing whispering and seeing dark shadows looming at the foot of their beds. At number 2 spot, with the Mob Museum. At a time, Las Vegas was controlled by the mob, and some believe they still do. So it's no surprise a museum of mob activity was built to recognize some of the horrific acts they committed. All of their exploits are documented at this mob museum, renovated from the same downtown courthouse where many of these characters were prosecuted. As you can imagine, they weren't too happy about their jail sentences, and some say their spirits still roam the halls after hours. The supernatural energy is especially strong near an exhibit dedicated to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, featuring a brick wall from a parking garage where 7 Chicago gangsters were shot dead in 1929. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have La Plaza Mansion. Although this property is pretty well put together, once you know about its past, you'll definitely look at it differently. It got such a bad rep, it eventually was considered to be Satan's mansion. Built in 1959, this now abandoned building was home to a threatening gangster. Here in this house, he would organize many of his hits. He would also execute others in that home, and he kept many people captive inside of the basement and the attic. So as the years went by, the house claimed more and more lives, eventually to a point when it reeked of the paranormal. Everyone who moved into the La Plaza Mansion reports a presence of negative energy that hangs over everything. And that's just where the haunting begins. If you visit, be prepared to hear whispers saying get out of here or kill her. And sometimes you might have some piece of furniture or decoration thrown at you aggressively. At number 10 spot, we have Slaughterhouse Canyon. This story shares similar characteristics as the story of La Llorona, so basically all sorts of messed up. In the late 1800s, a family lived inside of a small wooden shack in the middle of Slaughterhouse Canyon. The husband was a hardworking man and wanted nothing more but to provide and care for his own family. And around this time, gold rushes were a big thing, so it wasn't uncommon to have men leave the family for weeks on end. So one day the husband decided to go out on one of these gold rushes, but weeks turned into months and the husband never ended up returning. This caused the family to starve and suffer, but this had the most effect on the wife, who became extremely delusional from hunger and grief. This delusion caused her to grab an axe and proceeded to murder all of her children. She then carried their bodies to the nearby river where she screamed for days supposedly, until she passed away from starvation. And according to local residents, the wails and sobs of a heartbroken and psychotic mother can still be heard within the canyon at night. Number 9, the Mogollon Monster. This beast is also known as Arizona's Bigfoot, and as you can see from the photos, you can see why. This monster is said to live on the Mogollon Rim, which is a steep cliff that runs 200 miles from eastern Arizona all the way to New Mexico. The monster is also spotted within the Ponderosa Pine Forest as well. Those who have spotted it have said it stood 7 feet tall, covered in hair, and walked upright like a bipedal. The same people who saw it also noted how territorial and violent they can be. But really, why would anyone want to mess with these guys? It's said that if you smell rotting flesh nearby, then the Mogollon Monster is really close. So when that happens, be sure to dip straight out of the area. Number 8, skinwalkers. If you know a thing or two about mythical creatures, then you must know about skinwalkers. Well, yeah. Arizona is their home, unfortunately. Arizona is deeply rooted in the Navajo culture, so this is a beast that originates from that. A skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or even disguise himself as another animal. For some infight, the Navajo believed in powers and that it could be used for either good or evil. Medicine men use the powers for good in order to heal and apply aid, but the alternative route is to use the powers for bad. Only when a person commits the evilest of deeds will they be given supernatural powers, turning them into a skinwalker. They can transform into anything they want as well, including any animal or human. And the worst part is that if you stare into the eyes of a skinwalker, they can absorb themselves within your own body. So yeah, let that one sink in with you. Number 7, 2 guns. Along Interstate 40, stuck between Flagstaff and Winslow, is the Arizona ghost town of 2 guns. Not much remains of this once thriving town after fire in 1971 nearly burnt it to a crisp. However, this wasn't the only time the town faced bad luck and tragedy. In 1878, the story goes that a group of Apaches raided a Navajo camp and took off toward Canyon Diablo. The Navajo gave chase and found their enemies hidden in a small cave in a shallow part of the canyon. They ended up burning 42 of them. Ever since this massacre, the town has been said to be cursed. Further confirming this, in the 1920s, this town started to become alive again with new buildings including a trading post, restaurant, gas station, and even a post office. This development didn't stop there. Eventually, a new zoo was going to be created, except the builders decided to excavate the local cave where the massacre occurred. They ended up pulling out a lot of human bones and skulls and used them for decorations. Yeah, I know. At our number 6 spot, we have the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. East of Phoenix, Arizona, a local legend arose, inspiring many men to find riches they could only imagine. The Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine is possibly the most famous lost mine in all of the world, and people have been trying to find its whereabouts since 1892. The story goes that in the late 1800s, a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz found a gold mine that made him wealthy overnight. But as many of us would probably do, he kept it a secret from everyone. Fast forward, and on his deathbed, he would give a handful of people the directions to find this cave. However, these directions did nothing because it's still lost today. Each year, a little under 10,000 people attempt to find this lost mine, and unfortunately, this expedition has cost many of them their lives. Many of them are found headless, shot by a firearm, or go completely missing from the grid. So if you ever want to become very rich really quick, why not give it a shot and find this lost mine? In the hump of our list, we have the Wraith. Many of you have seen this image somewhere on the internet, but the people of Arizona have seen this creature in person. These monsters are said to reside in the Grand Canyon caverns near Peach Springs, Arizona. They are described to be 9 feet tall, slender beings that only appear at night and having a thirst for human flesh. And it's pretty easy for them to devour us because it's said that their claws are the size of our fingers alone. You will know one is nearby just by the sound they make. It resembles a high screech, and at close ranges, it could even make a person deaf. These creatures have been spotted all the way back since 1800s, and ever since, they have made their mark on Arizona's history. Number 4, Arizona State Prison Complex. Since 1910, death sentences have been carried out in the Florence prison. According to the Arizona Department of Corrections website, about 100 inmates have been executed by hanging, lethal injection, or gas chambering on the grounds of the state's first secret prison in Florence in the past 100 years. And let me tell you, from all those deaths, a lot of ghosts are bound to come. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that there have been quite a few supernatural tales told over the years, coming from both prisoners and guards. Both have reported seeing several instances of, quote, mist that look in the human form, or having their ears assaulted with, quote, screams and other strange sounds. Much of this paranormal activity occurs in the building that houses the prison's death chamber, which would make a lot of sense to say that these are the ghosts of former inmates. Number 3, Oliver House. This building is considered to be the most haunted hotel in all of Arizona, so I guess I'll be booking my next visit right now. I'm just joking. So the reason why many claim this is the most haunted hotel in the state is the fact that 26 lives were lost in this building since it first opened in the early 1900s. So yeah, this house has a bloody history. During the gold rush, the house served as a hotel for miners, and one story involves a miner by the name of Nathaniel Anderson who stayed in room 13 at the Oliver House. He would be caught going out with the wife of someone he owes money to, and days after, he would be found dead with 2 gunshot wounds. Guests of room 13 now claim to see his ghost near the stairs before it completely enters the room. One DJ even booked the room after a $100 bet, and the moment he stepped in, he said he saw Anderson's body standing in the middle of the room. Number 2, Jerome Grand Hotel. This hotel first started as a hospital, and as we know, hospitals are haunted. Just kidding. But hospitals are inevitably going to have a lot of lives lost within, and as they say, more deaths, more ghosts. You get the point. After the building turned into a hotel, many residents claimed supernatural activity within the halls, in their rooms, and basically everywhere in the hotel. And many placed blame on the former patients who passed away in the former hotel. Apart from the haunting, the place is also a beacon of bad luck. A man named Cloud Harvey lost his life after being crushed by a self-service elevator, and another 5 people took their own lives inside of this hotel. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have Territorial Prison. Yuma's Territorial Prison is known for being a gloomy and unwelcoming place for visitors, and is situated as far west as you can go before approaching California. Over 3,000 prisoners were kept in this prison throughout its 33-year operational period. Inmates who committed murder, theft, and even worse convicts were jailed in here. The walls of this jail were so high that the inmates were unable to see the outside, and the worst among them was placed in the dark cell. The convicts were banished into the darkness, left to their own devices to cast any curses or evil thoughts they dared. With its rich history and tragic figures, it is now a fascinating museum to visit with your family. At our number 10 spot, we have the Candy Lady. In the early 1900s, children in the rural town of Terrell, Texas started to go missing. Some of the residents blamed it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's home windows just before bedtime. As the parents began to fall asleep, it'll encourage children to grab the candy, but as they try to grab it, the lady grabs them and feasts on their sugar-laden blood until there isn't any left. A farmer allegedly found rotten teeth on his farm and later found the body of a boy with his pockets stuffed with candy. Many people believe that Candy Lady is in fact real and went by the name of Clara Crane. Clara Crane was accused of poisoning her husband back in 1895 with poison-laced caramel candies, but that's not all. 5 years before the incident, Crane's 5-year-old daughter passed away from unknown causes, which many believe that she poisoned her daughter as well. At our number 9 spot, we have La Llorona. This legend originates from El Paso, Texas. Almost all Latin cultures know the story of La Llorona, and the people of El Paso are no exception to that. La Llorona directly translates to the weeping woman, which perfectly describes the behavior of this malevolent spirit. She is said to haunt the riverbanks of the Rio Grande, where she is searching for her 2 children whom she had already drowned in that very river. Now there are many iterations of the story, but I'll just mention the most popular one. The legend goes that a lady found her boyfriend with another woman. After a heated argument between the two, the woman was heartbroken and wanted to get revenge, so she took the children and proceeded to drown them in the Rio Grande River in Texas. It's also said that when she was done throwing her children into the river, she went back to her lover's home with a bloody wedding gown, showing her she would do whatever it took to be with him. It's said to be the reason why many children disappear in that very area, and she supposedly takes other children to fill the void she lost. So if you're in the area, beware of a woman weeping in a wedding gown who is sitting by the Rio Grande. At a number 8 spot of El Cucuy. This creature is known as South Texas' official boogeyman. There are many versions of El Cucuy since it already originates in Mexico as well. It's said that this monster kidnaps children who misbehave and takes them back to the mountain where he lives to devour them. He appears as a hairless creature with an enormous head that dwarfs his spider-like body. He also has these large red glowing eyes, red ears to hear everything, and razor-sharp fangs and claws to accompany that. The origin of El Cucuy goes that a man was suffering with tuberculosis. Desperate to cure himself, he fetched an African witch doctor. The doctor told him to drink a child's blood, but as he did, he started to turn into the monster described. Ever since, he has a never-ending thirst for children's blood. At our number 7, we have the Screaming Bridge. In North Arlington, Texas, 50 years ago, there was a group of teenage girls driving home from a football game. The bridge was designed to only fit 1 car at a time, and I know, what a dumb bridge, but this was in the past and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The girls weren't paying attention and went full speed over the bridge until a car with no headlights struck them head on, with all of the girls passing away. Some say when they go near the bridge, they can hear the distant screams sounding like the girls before they passed away. As well, if you go over the bridge and look down at the water below, you can see the tombstones of all the girls with their names and birthdays written on it. At number 6 spot, we have the Goatman's Bridge. Why are there so many haunted bridges? Like, I don't get it. But in Denton County, Texas, lies the Goatman's Bridge, which was built in 1884. This bridge is supposedly haunted by the ghost of the Goatman. The story goes that a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn was renowned for quality meat, milk, and cheeses, and then he moved with his family just north of the bridge. Except when he arrived in this area, he was instantly the target of racial hate crime. The racist townfolk came together and burned down the farm with the family inside. They then threw Oscar's body over that very bridge. Now he appears as a half goat, half man humanoid that reeks of decaying flesh. If you knock on the bridge 3 times, it said that you can summon the Goatman, but now others use this area for rituals and other supernatural activities. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Lady of White Rock Lake. The lake is located in Dallas, Texas, and many visitors claim that they spot a drenched young woman who appears crawling out of the water or asking to fetch a ride. When many people offer her this ride, she disappears out of thin air and leaves a bloody, wet seat mark and a terrified driver. Even though many of the drivers were scared to their core, some decide to go to the address given to them by the girl. When they arrive at the door, they're all met by the same man who tells them that his daughter had gone sailing and never came back. Many people believe the story is inspired by the 1953 book Neiman Marcus, Texas, the story of the Proud Dallas Store, and according to the book, Malloy and his wife are driving home late one night in East Dallas when a young, beautiful blonde girl ghost appears on the road. Her elegant dresses is naturally wet and she seems to be in trouble. She gives them an address on Gaston Avenue and asks them to be taken home, but as they drive, she disappears, leaving only a mark. At our number 4 spot, we have the Lake Worth Monster. You just learned about the Goatman, right? Well, this is basically the Goatman, but of the lake. This monster terrorized the people of the town for years, with many describing the creature as being 7 feet tall, around 300 pounds, long-necked, flop-eared, pot-bellied, covered in white scales and hair. I swear I just described Shaquille O'Neal. The monster was supposedly captured on camera, but you guys be the judge of that one. It looks like a 2-year-old drew on a camera lens on a potato with a crayon and then took this photo. But who knows, it might be real. This beast was inspired by Sally Ann Clark's book, The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Lake, Fort Worth, Texas. In the book, the monster jumped on the hood of someone's car and shook up the car so badly that they got caught in a bad accident. The people described it being a 7 feet tall being covered in scales and fur and resembled a half goat and half man. Pretty scary if you ask me. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the Donkey Lady. The Donkey Lady of San Antonio, Texas dates all the way back in the late 1800s. The Donkey Lady was once a beautiful woman with children and a husband, but one day in a rage, the husband burned down the house with the children and wife still inside. The children passed away, but however, the wife managed to survive, but suffered greatly from this. Her toes and fingers would be fused together in a Hoove-like way, and her face was melted and sagging, inspiring the Donkey Lady name. There's a bridge in South San Antonio named the Old Applewhite Bridge, or the Donkey Lady Bridge. This is the bridge she went to crown after this horrible tragedy. Now it's said if you go to the bridge after midnight and call out the Donkey Lady, she will appear just before you. Some have claimed she had run at people who call out her name, or sometimes just stalks in the forest line waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. At number 2 spot, we have the girl who danced with the devil. The story takes place in the 1970s in San Antonio, Texas, with a young Mexican girl named Rosa. One day the girl wanted to attend a dance at a nearby nightclub named the El Cabroncito. However, the parents were very strict and didn't want her anywhere near the nightclub. Despite their orders, she snuck out of her house and traveled all the way to the nightclub where she could finally have her dance. At the club, Rosa was approached by this very tall, charming, and well-dressed man who asked her permission to dance. When they began dancing, Rosa was terrified when she discovered he had goat hooves instead of feet. When she screamed in terror, people in the club started to chase him out, but as he got close, he vanished out of thin air, leaving a trail of smoke and the smell of sulfur. Devil activity if that wasn't enough. It's said that the area surrounding the nightclub still smells of sulfur to this day. At a number 1 spot with El Muerto. El Muerto, otherwise known as the Headless Horseman of Texas, is a Texas legend that dates all the way back in the mid-1800s. The story goes that 2 rangers, Creed Taylor and William Bigfoot Wallace, were hunting a criminal known as Vidal along the Mexican border. Vidal had been wreaking havoc all across the state of Texas, so when the ranger caught them, they wanted to set an example. So they did just that and cut his head clean off. They then tied his head to the saddle and sent his horse with the headless body running off into the night. Now the horse continued to explore the region with its headless rider. The tale of El Muerto began to grow after it was reported that both had been seen numerous times and that gunshots had no impact on either of them. Spotting El Muerto was thought to foreshadow bad luck because everyone who claimed to have seen him was struck with a series of bad luck and poor health following it. At number 10 spot, we have the grave with stairs. Just from the photo alone, this is one of the scariest graves I've ever seen. Easy access to the dead, right? Well, this eerie grave belonged to a girl named Florence Irene Ford. Then in 1871, shortly after her 10th birthday, she passed away from yellow fever. So the reason for the stairs, when the daughter was alive, she was always terrified of storms. So you would get the classic mom taking care of her own daughter. But since she has now passed, the mother decided to build stairs down to her casket in order to comfort her daughter when it got stormy. I mean, it's a really sweet idea until you realize it's also really scary. She would go down these stairs, close a trapdoor above her, sit in complete darkness while singing hymns and songs to her daughter. I could only imagine what the people around must have thought when they heard this type of stuff. At number 9 spot, we have the Devil Worshipper Road. Located in Waynesboro, this road's real name is Waynesboro Shibuda Road, or by its more popular name, the Devil Worshipper Road. I know, I read that name and already knew this story was going to be all types of creepy. Story goes that a local farmer was struggling financially, so in hopes to provide for himself, him and his family decided it was best to sell his soul to the devil. He documented the creature that approached him as being 7 feet tall, red glowing eyes, and holding a pitchfork. Many people say that when they drive on this road at night, their car shuts down, leaving them stranded. And imagine just being in the middle of this rural highway in the middle of the night with nothing but trees and trees all around you. For some people, the spirits try to taunt them by shaking up their car until they either crash or have to stop driving completely. Then when your car is shut off, some claim that a half goat, half man will stand on top of your vehicle. This is basically the plot of any horror movie ever. But who knows if it's real, because why would anyone want to go to a road named Devil Worshipper's Road in the first place? At number 8 spot, we have the Weeping Woman of Callaway Hall. During the Civil War in Columbus, Mississippi, there were stories of a nurse who started to fall in love with a wounded soldier. After months in her care, the two would share stories and life experiences, but as the soldier started to heal back up, he quickly returned back into battle. He left, and after many years, he never ended up returning back to the woman. The nurse, who was named Mary, was so heartbroken that she ultimately made the decision to take her own life. She did this by jumping off the clock tower in the middle of the night. Now locals claim that her distraught spirit remains by the Callaway Hall Tower to this day. The security guards report that their faucets would turn on and off, and these are the faucets with the handles you need to physically turn, not no hand sensor one. And she got her name because she tends to wake up students in the middle of the night by crying at the end of their beds, so just imagine what that would look like. At our number 7 spot, we have McCredis disease. If you look up McCredis online, you won't find much about it. However, if you're from Mississippi, you've probably heard older relatives mention it. Men back in the day and sometimes until now would ingest large amounts of lead, which would make them secrete a chemical and would make the women around them descend into a homicidal rage. For example, women who were the friendliest and happiest would turn into irrational and erratic people. The story started in Europe when a man had an angry mob of women running after him after he ingested a good amount of lead. Finding he couldn't do anything about it, he jumped into the well below freezing river, and with no hesitation, all the girls jumped in and ended up drowning. Then it hit Mississippi when a large group of women became hostile and tried to kill every man in town. I don't know about you, but this is absolutely terrifying, but I'm gonna need more data for this. At number 6 spot, we have Goat Castle. In the August of 1932, Jane Surgic Morrill, better known as Jenny, was found murdered in her home. She had only purchased the home recently, but friends noticed at the moment she got it, she was showing very strange behavior. Many people consider that she was trying to live a hermit lifestyle. By the way, she only had visits from her cousin and suspected lover, Duncan. Shortly after, the two of them would start to have issues with their neighbor, Richard Dana and Octavia Dockery. So when she was found murdered, the police immediately suspected it to be the neighbors, Richard and Octavia. Except when the police went to the couple's home to ask questions, the mansion was in complete disarray and was a complete disaster. Painting was peeling, windows were broken, holes were in the walls, and the house was infested with insects. As well, the house contained live animals, including a goat, hence the name. Eventually, the couple was cleared for murder and allowed to go back into their home, except they would pass away shortly. Now it's said that if you walk into the home, you can see an apparition who is believed to be Jenny seeking revenge for her murder. Right in the hump of our list, we have McRaven Tour Home. This place is sometimes called Mississippi's most haunted house, and for very good reason. The McRaven Tour Home, located at 1445 Harrison Street in Vicksburg, once served as a Confederate campsite and a makeshift hospital. Supposedly, at least 11 people have been buried on the property ground. Many witnesses have reported seeing all of the ghosts who have been buried on the property. These ghosts include Mary Elizabeth Howard, who died during childbirth in the house in 1836. During the siege of Vicksburg, McRaven was transformed into a makeshift hospital. According to local legend, John H. Bob caught some Union soldiers tampering with his crops, became enraged and threw a brick at one of them, and seeking revenge, the soldiers returned later, and that night they killed Bob, making him the third resident to die at McRaven, which he can also be seen walking around the home to this day. At number 4 spot, we have the Witch of Yazoo gravesite. In the middle of the old historic Glenwood Cemetery, there's a chain link surrounding a grave known as the Witch's Grave. According to local legend, a witch lived on the Yazoo River shoreline. This witch would lure in fishermen to tease and torture them for later. Eventually, the frequency of attacks increased and law enforcement was quickly involved. They eventually caught on to her ways and chased her through the swamps, where she half drowned in quicksand. As she sank down, she swore her revenge on Yazoo City and the townspeople, saying, quote, "In 20 years I will return and burn this town to the ground." No one thought of it at the time, and then came May 25th, 1904. The fire of 1904 destroyed more than 200 residents and nearly every business in Yazoo City, which is around 324 buildings in total. The witch's graves also has these chains around them, but apparently they need to be replaced constantly since they continue to be broken off. Do you think it's a witch, or is it just some people messing around the cemetery? What do you think? At number 3 spot, we have Witch Dance at Natchez Trace. Staying on the topic of witches, the forest trails of Natchez Trace, located in Tupelo, Mississippi, are said to have been a popular meeting spot for witches back in the day. The sign of the area reads Witch Dance. The very name conjures visions of eerie midnights, swirling back capes, and brooms stacked against a nearby tree. The old folks say the witches once gathered here to dance, and that wherever their feet touched the ground, the glass withered and died, never to grow again. Impossible? Maybe so, but look around. Look for a hidden spot where no grass grows. So basically, when you see dead grass, witches are said to have danced there, and some of these barren or scorched spots of the ground can still be seen to this day. At number 2 spot, we have the Chautauqua Monster. This is basically Mississippi's Bigfoot. So according to the Pike County legend, a circus train was going down the old Illinois Central Railroad, and in a sudden turn of events, it derailed in the swamps near Chautauqua. Except this circus was not like any regular circus. It apparently had many strange critters and creatures on board, one of them being a half man, half ape hybrid, which appeared as a large hairy creature. This creature was very hostile and would attack any person or animal that got too close. So a search party was quickly put together to capture this beast, but they left empty-handed and the monster was never seen again. At number 1 spot, we have Robert Johnson and the Crossroads. This is probably the most original story that related crossroads with selling your soul to the devil. So there's that. So for those who don't know the legend, Robert Johnson was a semi-lackluster guitar player until he decided to journey to the crossroads of Highway 49 and 61 in Clarksdale. This is where he famously made a deal with the devil, where he would sell his soul in exchange for a formidable technique and mastery of the blues. His style did a complete 180, and his style took over jazz with its unique flair. Legend has that 3 of his most hauntingly desperate recordings, Crossroad Blues, Hellhounds on My Trail, and Me and the Devil Blues, are a trilogy of his deal with the devil. And guess how old he is when he died? Yup, 27 years old. At a number 10 spot, we have the Devil's Chair. I mean, just by listening to the name, you already know there is zero goodness in this chair. So numerous physics and clairvoyants meet up year-round in Cassadaga, Florida, which is known as a state spiritual hub to showcase their talents. Specifically, they meet up in Lake Helen Cemetery. As expected, this spiritual retreat is a hive of spiritual activity, but one place in particular is said to give you the shivers. The Devil's Chair of Cassadaga is a big brick chair, and it's so-called haunted because many locals think that if you sit in it late at night when no one is present, the devil will come and visit you. The chair is said to be the way for the devil to communicate with you, but the odd thing is that the devil actually enjoys a cold one, you know, a beer. It's said that if you leave an open beer on this chair, it will be empty in the morning. So just to be sure, make sure you don't take a little rest in the cemetery, because it could be a terrifying experience.
Now at number 9, the Florida skunk ape, also known as the swamp cabbage man. The stink ape has been said to inhabit Florida, North Carolina, and Arkansas. The stories date back to the 60s and 70s, during the time of the Bigfoot mania, when the ape-like creature running on 2 legs was spotted in South Florida. The creature gets its name from its pungent odor, said to be a byproduct of living alongside alligators and other swamp inhabitants. There's actually an official skunk ape research headquarters in Okeechobee, where a researcher collects and investigates reports of swamp ape sightings.
At a number 8 spot, we have the grave of the Tallahassee Witch. The Old City Cemetery in Tallahassee, Florida is not your regular graveyard. In this cemetery lies a supposed witch. Yes, a real witch. The witch went by the name of Elizabeth Budd Graham, or Bessie, who was only 23 when she passed away in 1889. Her tombstone is the most expensive and the most noticeable. It has this nice stone wall with large granite vases, sculpted feathers, and a cross inside of a crown. The legend goes that Elizabeth bewitched a wealthy man into marrying her, and this is why her tombstone looks like this. The scary thing is that her tomb has a dark witch references chiseled all around the stones. A lot of the writing is written in unique poem-like fashion, but some witch references she made was doubly dead, which means that a witch can only be dead once and killed twice. Others who visit the tombstone report feelings of unease, and they often report strange individuals leaving items at the tomb. To this day, it's said that the fellow witches often visit the grave to leave gifts for Bessie.
Now at number 7, Spook Hill. In Lake Wales, there's a gravity hill that freaks out those traveling through by car. Stop your car in the right place on Spook Hill, put it in neutral, and watch as your vehicle rolls up the hill. On North Wales Drive, a sign says this: many years ago, an Indian village on Lake Wales was plagued by raids of a huge gator. The chief, a great warrior, killed the gator in a battle that created a small lake. The chief was buried on the north side. Pioneer mail riders first discovered their horses laboring downhill, thus naming it Spook Hill. When the road was paved, cars coasted uphill. Is this the gator seeking revenge, or is the chief still trying to protect his land?
At a number 6 spot, we have Robert the Doll. Now, I did a whole top 10 on this haunted doll, so go check it out in the other video if you haven't already. For those staying and don't know him, the story of Robert the Doll dates back to the early 1900s in Key West, Florida. A young boy named Eugene was given this doll, and he named him Robert. Everything was good until the doll started to act super strange one night. On this night, Eugene woke up and looked at his bedside, and scary enough, the doll was facing and staring right into his eyes. Eugene's mother heard the boy scream, but as she was running to the room, she heard furniture banging all across the room. When she finally got into the room, it was completely wrangled up with Robert the Doll sitting on the edge of the bed. They then decided to lock Robert into the attic, but at night they would hear Robert's footsteps above them. Then when Eugene passed away, Robert the Doll claimed the life of a 10-year-old girl, and the girl's parents reported that the daughter would complain about hearing the doll at night and seeing it walk.
Halfway at number 5, Death Bridge. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge was a modern beauty when it opened in 1954. The bridge spans the mouth of Tampa Bay, connecting St. Petersburg on the north side with Bradenton on the south. But due to its height, it's also been an infamous spot for jumpers taking their own lives over the years. More than 200 people over the decade, according to some reports. Drivers on the bridge have also reported seeing a beautiful blonde hitchhiker on the bridge. When they pick her up, she begins to cry as the car approaches the top of the span. When the driver turns around to ask what's wrong, the woman has vanished. In 1980, the bridge was struck by a cargo ship, collapsing the central span and taking taking the lives of 36 people.
At our number 4 spot, we have the Pensacola Lighthouse. Legend says that a couple known for having constant fights owned the property. After a decade of living there, the lady randomly decided to take her husband's life, but she wasn't done yet. She proceeded to chop his body up in over 1,000 pieces and bury the pieces all around the lighthouse. The lighthouse's property also served as a place to treat Civil War soldiers, and many have passed away at the property as well. Visitors of the lighthouse claim to hear footsteps when no one else is there, and hearing their names being called throughout the whole building. Now the site is being controlled by the United States Coast Guard, and they even allowed ghost hunters to investigate the area in an episode. Season 5, episode 5, if you guys are wondering.
Now at number 3, Sunland Hospital. Have you ever heard of Sunland Hospital in Orlando? It served as a tuberculosis hospital and later evolved into a training center for children with special needs. The facility closed after allegations of abuse and neglect and health code violations. The main patient building was turned into a park, and reports claim that ghostly patients still hang around. Park visitors reported hearing children's laughter when no children were around, and strange lights. Some also claim swings and other playground equipment moved by themselves. Apparently, after being torn down in 1999, all of that remains of the Sunland facility is the old administration building. There was a Sunland Hospital in Tallahassee too, but the location closed in the 80s after reports of experiments and an apparent lawsuit filed claiming abuse occurred at the hospital. The state of Florida then closed all Sunland facilities in 1983.
2 spot, we have the Bloody Bucket Bridge. Yeah, sounds really nice. During the time of the Civil War, an African American couple moved and settled in Wauchula, Florida. The woman worked as a midwife and she was pretty content with her situation. As time passed by, the wife started to act unstable, and it was all due to the memory of her own child being stripped from her life during the Civil War. Haunted by the event, she took it on her own to suffocate babies as they were being born, and what's worse is that she told the parents it was a stillbirth. Then it said that she would take the remains of the baby to her husband, who would help grind them up and place them in a bucket. Later, she would take these buckets to the bridge and dump them into the water, hence the Bloody Bucket Bridge. People claim that if you visit the bridge on a full moon night, the water will appear red in color, looking like the blood of the baby she took.
Now taking our number 1 spot, Devil's Tree. Inside Port St. Lucie's Oak Hammock Park sits an old oak tree that locals say is evil, or more accurately, that something evil occurred there and it still haunts the land. In 1971, before the park was established, Gerard Schaefer, an ex-deputy for the Broward County Sheriff's Office, assaulted and took the lives of 2 19-year-old girls, Paulette Goodenough and Barbara Ann Wilcox, then buried them beneath an old oak tree. He was then arrested for homicide and stabbed till he passed away in prison in 1995. The girls had been missing since January 8th, 1973, but their bodies weren't discovered until 1977, when 2 fishermen noticed bones protruding from the ground. Local legends and ghost stories about the area include claims of blood-curdling screams erupting from the surrounding woods, ghostly apparitions, and camera malfunctions near the Devil's Tree. Police have responded to numerous calls claiming devil worshippers in hooded robes were performing rituals there. In 1993, the local pastor conducted an exorcism and put up a cross at the site. Numerous efforts to cut the tree down failed when chainsaws malfunctioned or axes broke.
At number 10 spot, we have the Tulsa's Hex House. Located on 10 East 21st Street in Oklahoma, is the remnants of a home that was once a horror house. The owner of the home during the 1940s was a 45-year-old woman named Carolyn Smith. However, she wouldn't be the only resident in the home, as she would keep 2 other women there as quote-unquote slaves. These 2 women were named Virginia Evans and Willetta Horner, who were 30 and 31 years old at the time. They claim that they were being hexed by Corlin and were basically forced to give their paychecks directly to her, with their big reward coming when they arrived in the gates of heaven. Basically, Corlin would keep these 2 women in her basement and live off their checks. But that wasn't all. She would also receive aid from one of her slaves' parents, in which she received a total of $20,000 for nursing care. After the 2 women were suspected of missing, a police investigation eventually found them in prison in the home's basement, living in the worst conditions, and this was during a 7-year span. Corlin will only get subjected to 1 year in prison, and the house was demolished with a parking lot built on top of it. However, some believe that the same basement is still underneath the parking lot. At a number 9 spot, we have the mysterious Shaman's Portal. There is thought to be a literal portal in the sand dunes of Beaver, Oklahoma, known as Shaman's Portal, or Oklahoma's Bermuda Triangle to others. The legend goes that in the 1500s, there was once a Spanish explorer named Coronado who stumbled upon the sand dunes. When he entered, he was warned by all local native tribes about the dangers of exploring the dunes, especially since they would avoid this area for almost centuries. However, as like any other early settler, Coronado didn't listen and instead brought 3 other men with him to explore these dunes. Halfway through their trip, they encountered strange flashes which seemed to look like green lightning. Then 3 men accompanying Cunningham died immediately, and Coronado would write about this situation in his journal. Oklahoma State University archaeologist Dr. Mark Thatcher even spent 3 years studying the area until it was shut down by men with military credentials, which matched the description of the Men in Black. So could this place be a spot where potential UFOs could have been, or is this place in fact cursed like the natives say? At number 8 spot, we have the Satanic Purple Church. In the town of Spencer, Oklahoma, there are remains of an old church with stairs leading to a basement known as the Purple Church. Locals claim that this place was used for devil worship and forms of witchcraft and other animal sacrifices. Others even claim that when a full moon coincides with a Saturday, then Satanists will sacrifice virgins here at this church. Apart from that, before you enter, you will be met with various satanic purple pentagrams and different symbols. If you happen to stumble upon the area, don't be surprised to see animal carcasses scattered around, as they were probably used in some type of ritual. The issue about this place is that people have been chased not only by the spirits, but by real men in robes and even the local landowners. So be sure to get permission if you decide to step foot in this haunted place. At number 7 spot, we have the ghost of the Little Theater. Located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is a tiny theater which was built in 1932. Although it is very small, it was home to many performances and progressed the entertainment scene in Oklahoma. However, in the 70s and the 80s, the theater would go through many fires which halted production, and some say there were deaths in those fires that were never recorded. Then by 2004, the theater would go through disrepair and many would trespass to leave graffiti and garbage around. Eventually, the theater was fixed back up, but many who would visit claim that it wasn't the same as it used to be. Locals believe that the spirits of former workers and crew still reside inside of the building. Stage performers often report that they are sharing a stage with someone when there is no one else backstage with them. And according to a legend, a director passed away during a performance. So could it be his apparition that appears on stage, or could it just be a piece of our imagination? At a number 6 spot, with the Spooklight Road. Spooklight Road, located in the small town Peoria, is a road in America where you are bound to encounter something you really don't want to. Specifically named East 50th Street, this stretch of road is said to have an unexplained light appearing over the sky in different shapes to different people. Some believe it's supernatural activity, while others believe UFOs. It was such a popular place during the 40s that during World War II, the US Army Corps of Engineers spent weeks in the area with the best technology, but in the end of the day, they had more questions than they had answers. This unexplained light has been debunked on different sources, with claims of a person holding a lantern or even a person on a horse holding a lantern. But from the photos, what do you guys think about this? In the hump of our list, we have the Camp Scott Girl Scout Massacre. In the year 1977, a horrific tragedy occurred at the Camp Scott in Mays County, Oklahoma. This is when 3 Girl Scouts aged 8 to 10 were murdered by one psychopath. However, this all could have been prevented if they had listened to a message they had received prior to the killings. This is because weeks before, they had received a message saying, quote, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls, intent 1. The camp director thought it was an elaborate joke and ended up discarding the letter. After a police investigation, they arrested local jail escapee Jean Leroy Hart, but 2 years later, he was released after there was insufficient evidence. Now when people try to walk through this now abandoned camp, they claim to hear the spirits of the 3 girls murdered. However, I personally think that this isn't the worst part. It's the fact that this case was never solved, especially considering in 1989, DNA testing was conducted that showed 3 of the 5 probes matched Hart's DNA. As well, in 2022, authorities made public that DNA evidence strongly suggests Hart's involvement. Regardless, may these girls rest in peace. At a number 4 spot, we have Veterans Lake. Introducing the most haunted lake in the state of Oklahoma, the Veterans Lake. Located in the western portion of Sulphur, Oklahoma, this lake was built to honor American war veterans. However, for many years, many have claimed that this lake is possessed by a woman who had drowned in the lake while trying to save her baby. People think that if you go swimming at night, her spirit will try to grab you and drown you down with her. There has also been stories of apparitions flying over the water, and with some claiming to see the woman's face when looking down at it. People have also reported hearing a woman's voice while boating on the lake crying for aid and requesting that someone save her child from drowning. At number 3 spot, with the Stone Lion Inn. In Guthrie, Oklahoma is the infamous Stone Lion Inn. The 114-year-old inn has a pretty dark history, with some of the guests never checking out of this hotel. And by that, I mean they're still inside. Since the beginning of its construction, every single owner and visitor have reported something strange coming from this home. And this shouldn't be a surprise, because in the 1920s, this place was used as a funeral parlor. So best believe more than a few spirits have made its way to this home. Now the current owner of the home has had the property since the 1980s, and they claim that ever since they began reconstruction of the home, the quote-unquote old souls have been woken up and they make their presence known inside of this building. Guests find themselves either being tucked in bed or dragged out of it when they're all alone. When paranormal investigators came in, they found that the bathrooms had high EMF ratings, which also happens to be the spot where many people took their own lives. So if you ever want to visit the most haunted building in Oklahoma, maybe the Stone Line Inn is your best bet. At a number 2 spot, we have the Skirvin Hotel. First opening in 1911, this 10-story hotel was an instant hit to many tourists and anyone looking for a nice place to stay for a night. However, once people learned about the dark history attached to this place, many will go on searching for another local hotel. This is because the Skirvin Hotel has been rumored to be haunted by a lady who passed away the first year it opened up. The story goes that a maid named Effie had a secret affair with the owner, Mr. Skirvin, but he became extremely paranoid once Effie delivered his baby, so he decided to hide Effie and lock her up in a room on the 10th floor. After days of being locked up, Effie decided to take their baby and jump off the balcony to their deaths. Ever since that tragedy, this hotel has had countless supernatural occurrences. Visitors claim to see the spirit of Effie roaming the halls at night. At a number 1 spot, we have Elephant on LSD. In 1962, researchers from the University of Oklahoma injected a 7-ton bull elephant by the name of Tusco with 297 milligrams of LSD or acid. Lead researcher Jolly West was also involved in the controversial MK Ultra experiment, where they tested the use of psychedelics for brainwashing. The goal was trying to induce musk, which is the testosterone-fueled ultra rage that elephant males go into during breeding season. And 5 minutes after the elephant was injected, Tusco would fall to the ground and just start seizing. To make things worse, they injected Tusco with an additional 2,800 milligrams of promazine hydrochloride, an anti-nausea and sedative drug. After an hour of injections, Tusco would eventually pass away. The whole idea was controversial to begin with and shouldn't have ever happened. But what makes this failed experiment interesting is that acid is not supposed to be lethal to animals that size. To prove this, in 1984, a researcher from UCLA administered large doses of acid to 2 other elephants with none of them dying, making others believe that the other drugs they gave Tusco led him to his doom. At a number 10 spot, we have the Palmer House Hotel. In Sauk Center, Minnesota lies the Palmer House Hotel. This hotel stands on the grounds of the city's first hotel, named the Sauk Center Hotel, which ended up burning down in June 1900. When the Palmer House was built the next year in 1901 by Christina and Ralph Palmer, it served as a shelter for distant travelers and a meeting place for many of the locals of the town. However, every single year there would be more and more reports of strange occurrences happening inside of the hotel. Guests and staff alike would initially notice cold spots associated with the feeling of dread, as well as doors closing on their own, but eventually various people would report disembodied voices and tugs from the ghost of a little boy seen running in the hallways. This place was investigated by American paranormal television series The Dead Files, and during the investigation, psychic medium Amy Allen confronted a dark presence attempting to take control of her physical being. The room with the most activity is said to be room 22, where this one lady says that she made contact with a ghost child named Thomas, but you can book any other rooms if you don't want to encounter a ghost. Your choice. At a number 9 spot, we have the Kensington Runestone. This slab of stone looking like straight out of the Bible was allegedly found somewhere in central Minnesota during 1898. It was found by Olaf Oman, who was a Swedish archaeologist who found it after removing a tree in his farm. The stone had Viking runes, and one of the texts read the year 1362, which ultimately suggested that Scandinavians arrived in North America 130 years before Christopher Columbus did in 1492. The text talks about a journey to discover the Vinland, which is considered to be North America, and considering it was found in Minnesota, it seems like they completed their task. So is this finally solid evidence to suggest that someone discovered America before Columbus? Well, not really. Many people believe this is a great big hoax, especially considering the fact that the family who discovered it had a book about runic scripts. And when more research was done, the language used inside of the stone was pretty modern. However, if this was true, this would be very groundbreaking news. At number 8 spot, we have Dead Man's Trail. The small town of Thief River Falls in northern Minnesota is known for 2 major rivers, the Red Lake and the Thief. These 2 rivers meet up within the town, and during the early years, it affected a lot of the development within the town. Many native tribes would battle for the land, with eventually the Ojibwa coming out on top and forcing the Dakota tribe out of the area. After years of conflict, this town eventually started to have more reports of the supernatural, with the most being reported during a hike in the Dead Man Trail trail. One story goes that the trail was being used as a hiding spot for a man wanted for murder, while another story talks about a Native American woman who was trying to escape from people chasing her. She ran as fast as she could, but her newborn baby would just slow her down, causing her to hide the baby beside the river. When she went back to get the infant, she discovered it had been carried away from the river. Hikers have reported witnessing her ghostly apparition, hunting for her infant to this day. At number 7 spot, we have the Mounds Theater. Built in 1922, this theater was once used as a venue for live entertainment and silent movies. While it had many good moments, there are many accidents inside of the theater. However, there are no reported deaths inside. Eventually, it would get closed down in 1967, then reopened once again in 2001. This little mix of accidents with abandonment is the perfect recipe for ghosts to live in, and this is the case made by many staff and visitors of the theater. Late night workers and janitors have reported being physically grabbed by a ghost, and others report a ghost named Red who throws things at women, and also a young girl has been reported wearing a pink dress bouncing a ball on stage when no one else is around. At number 6 spot, we have the Lake Pepin Serpent. Here comes another iteration of the Loch Ness Monster that lurks the depths below the US. Introducing the Pepe Monster, or PP Monster, whatever floats your boat, but I guarantee this beast won't. As it's mentioned from the name, this beast is located in Lake Pepin, which is basically the border between the states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. This monster became more popular in the media after businessman Larry Nielsen offered a $50,000 reward for finding this creature. After years, no one has had solid evidence of the creature. But Larry himself is convinced it exists out there and only wants to pay the money to see the creature one last time again. This is because 11 years ago, before he put the bounty out, he spotted a quote 200 feet long and 2 feet high creature going upstream. In the hump of our list, we have the Wendigo. This devil of a creature is a well-known one to many, but many don't know that the first original sightings of the Wendigo happened in the state of Minnesota. Wendigos are said to be as tall as 15 feet and very slender-like. However, don't be deceived, because they are said to be very strong monsters that have a never-ending desire to eat and kill humans. The legend states that a person can become a Wendigo if they decide to take part in cannibalism or any other heinous acts of humanity. These bad deeds essentially turn you into this monster, and this creature can possess you and even turn you into one itself if the person is greedy or weak enough. There are multiple myths talking about what Wendigos look like, but majority of them describe them to look like an animal but very tall, with a skull as a head, long legs, and their whole body covered in hair and drenched in blood. They are also said to be very fast and have super hearing with an amazing sense of smell, and in some cases they are said to walk on water, but they're not Jesus, remember. So be very cautious next time you try to camp in the forests of Minnesota. At number 4 spot, we have Crazy Annie's Bridge. 95 miles out of Rochester, Minnesota is a bridge known as Crazy Annie's Bridge, and it's also said to be one of the most haunted bridges in all of America. According to hauntedhopeville.com, this bridge is located in Henderson, Minnesota on 270th Street, just in case you guys want to take a quick visit. But I guarantee that's probably not the best idea. This bridge in particular is said to be haunted by a mother named Annie, who was reportedly from the early 1900s. Story goes that Annie lived in the area during the time of World War I. She fell in love with a man and started a family with 3 kids. But eventually the man would end up going overseas to fight in the war. And unfortunately, after months, the man would never end up returning. This is when the woman would go insane and eventually take her 3 children and drown them in this nearby bridge. And ever since, it's said that you can hear the cries of all 3 children and even the mother on the bridge if you decide to go on it in the middle of the night. Number 3, Hibbing High School. Hibbing High in Minnesota is not your typical average school building. Here, the staircases are marble, the railings are brass, and the art walls hold the whole almost medieval design together. The auditorium was modeled after the Capitol Theater, which is a sight in and itself. And when Bob Dylan was still Robert Zimmerman and a student at Hibbing High, he performed on the auditorium stage during a talent show. But even with star performers and a stunning design, it's a lone seat inside of the auditorium that attracts the most attention from everyone. The story goes that the first stage manager named Bill was employed at the school from 1927 to the late 1960s when he passed away after a chandelier fell on his head. Rumors soon arose that Bill really never left his favorite seat in the theater named J47. In the early 90s, Chuck Perry, who at the point had been stage manager since 1979, took a series of photographs of the auditorium after a woman reported feeling a cold chill as soon as she walked around J47 row. And lo and behold, one of the photographs taken with the Polaroid camera showed a man sitting in J47 wearing formal clothes and a top hat. and you could reportedly see right through him. So is this ghost? Who knows? At number 2 spot, we have the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. In west central Minnesota, in a small town named Vergas, is the tale of the Hairy Man legend. And no, we're not talking about some random dad who happened to have a little too much hair on their back. This legend has existed in the region for the past 6 decades, and that's only because the reports are not done happening, and every single year it seems like there's a new experience with the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. The man is described as being 8 feet tall, having long hair, smelling like complete garbage, and always walking barefoot. In other words, you would probably think this guy was a more civilized Bigfoot than anything else. Many believed he was just an old homeless man living in the woods and didn't want anyone near his land. However, the Hairy Man gained more notoriety after a man named Ken Zitzaw returned back from driving in the woods with dents in his car hood. He claimed it was the Hairy Man. Others have reported other attacks regarding the Hairy Man, but in the end, it's not confirmed if he really exists or not, or if he's just a figment of our imagination. At number 1 spot, we have the Glen Sheen Mansion. Minnesota's most notorious killing occurred at the Glen Sheen Mansion in Duluth. Elizabeth Condon, the heiress who inherited the home, was murdered in her bed in 1977. The body of her nurse was discovered on the Great Staircase, and the home, which is now held by the University of Minnesota Duluth, is said to be the most haunted in the state. After hours, employees have heard screaming, and some claim to see a white lady dressed in really dark clothing wandering throughout the entire mansion. At a number 10 spot, we have the Torch Lake Monster. This one is pretty much well known all over Michigan, but for those who don't know, the tale of the Torch Lake Monster dates back to the early 1960s and 70s. Obviously, it takes place in Torch Lake, which is located in North Michigan, and it also is the second largest lake in the state. A fisherman and coach by the name of Dave Foley is credited with spotting the creature first and telling the stories of it since he worked by the lake for a while. Legend goes that the giant creature has a lizard's body, the head of a cat, 1 brown eye, and 1 blue eye, along with slimy green skin. The lake is approximately 285 feet deep, which makes what lies underneath much more scary and worrisome. Nighttime is when this creature is said to arise from the depths. At this time, many swimmers and boats go missing, only to wash ashore with no evidence of its demise. At a number 9 spot, we have the singing sands of Beat Gris. Located just past Lac La Belle, Michigan, is a beautiful white sandy beach known as Beat Gris. In a direct translation, this means gray beast, and that's because a large gray creature was said to have inhabited the area many years ago, but that's not even the story I'm going to talk about. Local legends claim that the pure white sand of the beach sings by pressing down your palms on it, or it barks when you strike it. The sound is said to be the voice of a Native American maiden who lost her lover when he drowned in the Great Lakes, and now she calls him on shore. The sand is said to lose its magical singing power when it's removed from the beach. Now visitors claim to hear the singing sounds, but as many try to bring the sound back home, they are met with years of unlimited bad luck, which lead many to bring it back to the beach to allow it to sing again. Other than sand that makes sounds, at a number 8 spot with the Belle Isle's Lady in White. In Detroit, Michigan, there's an island called Belle Isle. This 982-acre island is used for picnics, hikes, and home of the only marble lighthouse. Other than that, everything else on this island is shrouded in mystery and up for speculation. Legend of the island follows the story of a chief's daughter and a haunting bridge. The chief was concerned that his daughter's beauty would attract vast amounts of suitors, so to combat this, he made a deal with the snake goddess of the island. The chief asked the goddess to protect his daughter. The goddess would agree, but not for nothing. She would ask for the daughter to live out the rest of her days on the island to protect it, never being able to leave it. And to this day, the daughter is said to stay on this island and walk it, with many visitors reporting that she would try to lure them into the forest by telling them that she is looking for someone and just needs help. She supposedly takes her victims to the bridge to drown them, and it's said that if you go on this bridge and honk 3 times, she will appear just before your eyes. At number 7 spot with the Nain Rouge. It's said that since the city of Detroit was founded in Michigan, bad luck has befallen the area. This is all because of the devilish red imp known as the Nain Rouge had cursed the entire city. Local folklore suggests that the Detroit's founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, was warned by a fortune teller that he would come face to face with the Nain Rouge and to treat him with the most utmost respect and attention. Except this information came straight this ear and right out the other, because when he finally met with this creature, he hit it with his crane and told it to stay out of his way. This is when the angry Nain Rouge cursed the city of Detroit and Cadillac. Shortly after this, Cadillac would lose his fortune and move back to France, but misfortune still occurred in the city. It's said that in all disastrous events that happened in Detroit, the Nain Rouge could be spotted just before all of them. For example, in 1763, 50 British soldiers perished from Native Americans, after which the Nain Rouge could be seen dancing in the aftermath in joy. Then in the surrender of the war in 1812, the Nain was blamed again for its presence. It had also been seen during Detroit's riots of 1967 and 1976's ice storm that caused electricity to go out for days. At a number 6 spot with the Masonic Temple. Currently standing as the largest largest Masonic temple in the world, it also stands as one of the most haunted places in all of Michigan. The temple, designed by George D. Mason, is an imposing Gothic structure at the corner of Bagg Street, later Temple Street, and 2nd Avenue across from Cass Park. The temple has over 1,000 rooms, secret stairways, and concealed passages, but unfortunately Mason would go a little too far in this construction where it would cause him to go bankrupt, eventually losing his wife in the process. His depression slowly kicked in, and then he would jump off the roof of this temple to his death. And to this day, security guards claim to see old George's ghost climbing those steps to the rooftop. Visitors also reported many noises such as doors and windows being slammed shut. They also see moving shadows and experience cold spots all around the area, all while feeling as if they're being watched by something. Right in the hub of our list, we have the Michigan Triangle. Well, guess Michigan has their own version of Bermuda's Devil Triangle, and it contains just as much unexplained phenomena as Bermuda. The triangle goes from Manawak, Wisconsin to Ludington to Benton Harbor in Michigan. It was in early spring 1937 when Captain Donner was just managing his freighter ship called the O.S. McFarland through these icy waters. He was so tired, so he decided to go to sleep and asked for one of the crewmates to wake him up when they approached shore. As they did, they noticed his room was locked, so they looked around, but nothing. They then kicked the door down and found that he vanished with no signs whatsoever. Now the triangle claims the lives of many ships and planes just like Bermuda. People have also cited the O.S. McFarland, but as they try to get a closer look, it disappears into the waters. An odd thing about this place is when that divers go to check the wreckages of ships and planes, they notice that everything is still intact, including the bodies of the deceased and the ship as a whole. This is by far the scariest triangle because there is no way around it other than land. So basically there's no point in traveling in Michigan's Great Lakes. At our number 4 spot is Hell's Bridge. Back in the early 1900s, an old deranged man named Elias Frisk led a group of kids to the bridge and proceeded to murder each and every single one of them, slowly throwing them into the river below. Eventually he was caught and hung by the townsfolk. Before he passed away, he made a confession claiming that he did this because he was possessed by the devil and they told him to do it. To this day, a lot of visitors to the bridge hear the screams and the cries from the children just before they pass away. People have also said that when they get home from this place, they find bruises on their body as if someone was reaching out to grab them or hit them. The worst part is that if you walk on this bridge at night, you can feel hands below you as if they're grabbing you from the river below. And at the end of the bridge, you might encounter Elias as a dark figure with glowing eyes, so you won't miss him in the dead of night. In more lesser known news, apparently you're able to sell your soul to the devil by meeting the devil in the middle of this bridge. I mean, it's called Hell's Bridge, what else did we expect? At our number 3 spot, we have the Dogman. The Dogman is described as a 7-foot tall, amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like creature, and he has the head of a dog with the body and torso of a human. Ever since its original sighting in 1887, many more sightings were spotted all over Michigan. It's primarily spotted in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. Back to its original sighting back in 1887. This is when the Dogman was discovered by 2 lumberjacks who saw this creature in the distance. Things got a little more concerning when in 1937, Robert Forney was attacked by 5 wild dogs, describing that of one of the dogs allegedly stood up like a bipedal and was significantly larger than all the other dogs. This legend got more popular when disc jockey Steve Cook recorded a song called The Legend, which describes the Michigan's Dogman. Although the artist claims it was made for an April Fool's joke, this kickstarted the entire legend, and sightings of the Dogman would only rise after the song was released. At a number 2 spot with Melonhead. Locals' fear of humanoids called the Melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, Melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. Legend goes that Melonheads reside around Felt Mansion, which is home to Dora Felt, who is an American inventor. The Melonheads were said to be the children suffering from hydrocephalus, which causes your head to expand in some cases. They were located at the Junction Insane Asylum near the home, and it's said that they endured months and months of abuse, and that one day they decided to escape and run into the forests of Michigan, where they became animal-like and very feral. Many of these Melonheads are said to be looking for the doctor who failed to care for them in order to take his life. At a number 1 spot, we have Eloy Psychiatric Hospital. Located in Westland, Michigan, it was named after Detroit's postmaster Elois Davik. In 1839, it started as a poorhouse and a farm where the poor, the sick, and the needy would go for shelter and work. As time went on, the poorhouse transitioned into a psychiatric asylum and hospital. The buildings were self-sufficient, even having their own police. They were even one of the first hospitals in the world to use x-rays for diagnosis, so at least one good thing came out of here. At its peak, the place housed over 10,000 patients and over 2,000 staff members. After its closure in 1984, the hospital's abandoned grounds are said to have a few patients still left inside of it. Ghost patients, that is. There have been reports of people finding medical waste and other strange items. Some have reported finding jars containing human body parts, as well as documents outlining strange medical procedures. At number 10 spot, we have the Phantom Hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake. Near the city of Great Falls in Cascade County is a tale about a very notorious yet mysterious hitchhiker. If you happen to be coming off of Highway 87 going down Fort Benton, you may encounter a man on the side of the road at night. The area is very flat, so the man is very easy to spot when you're driving down this road. But unlike other people on the side of the roads, this person isn't looking to get a ride. Instead, once your car gets closer, the person is reported to roll over the hood of your car, across the windshield of the vehicle, as if they had been struck. As people begin to check on the man after they hit, they realize that they had hit nothing and the person they previously saw just disappeared. Over the years, there have been hundreds of reports that claim the same thing. They drive on this road, then they hit a man, only to find out it was nothing. Many believe this is the spirit of a Native American man who got struck and killed on this road. However, there's still no written document on it. At number 9 spot, we have Sacrifice Cliff. Overlooking Billings, Montana is Sacrifice Cliff. Despite the breathtaking views and scenic paths, this place has a very dark history attached to it. I mean, you probably already know that just by the name alone. Story goes that this cliff was once a peaceful meditation spot for the men of the Crow tribe. When they arrived here, they would be in complete silence, which showed the amount of respect they had for the area. However, a smallpox outbreak hit the area, causing the majority of the Crow tribe to perish within days. So one day, some of the boys returned to their homes from Sacrifice Cliff, only to discover that their entire village, including their family members, had all passed away from smallpox. They were so distraught they didn't see a point in living, so the boys decided to sacrifice themselves over this cliff. They would return back to the cliff with their horses, then they would proceed to blindfold the horse and then ride off these very cliffs to their deaths. Although this is a very sad tale, if you decide to visit this place at night, you may hear the sound of these horses as if they're falling from the cliff to this day. At number 8 spot, we have Flathead Lake Monster. Lurking in Flathead Lake is said to be a monster that closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But hey, I swear every place has their own version of it, so here's Montana's version. For those who don't know, Flathead Lake is situated northeast Montana, just in case you guys want to avoid this place for your next swim. Many visit this lake for its unprecedented beauty, but since 1889, there's been reports coming in the boatloads about this creature. It's described as a very large eel-like creature that moves around like a snake and is as long as 40 feet. Many say its head is shaped like a bowling ball with multiple humps on its back. No wonder people think this is the Loch Ness Monster. It all started in 1889 when James C. Kerr was making rounds across the lake when he and his passengers discovered this creature. They described it as a whale-like from its sheer size alone. Ever since, there's been hundreds of sightings, but who really knows what lies underneath the depths of this lake? At number 7 spot, we have the Alberta Bear Theater. Located in Billings, Montana as well is the famous Alberta Bear Theater. The theater was originally named the Fox Theater, but in 1987, the theater was renamed the Alberta Bear Theater in honor of his daughter, Alberta. And this 1,400-seat theater was like any other. It was beautiful on the inside, which housed many professional touring companies and various performing artists. However, most visitors and workers claim to see the same two spirits lurking inside of the theater. This includes one male entity and one female. The male is described as wanting to be noticed, out of sorts, and very possessive, while the female is described as being very benign and very friendly. So let's talk about the guy. It's said that he is the spirit of a past employee who took his own life at the theater, which keeps him there trapped for eternity. So if you guys are looking to come to this theater, be on the lookout for these two. At number 6 spot, we have the Garnet Ghost Town in Coloma. Coloma, Montana is known as the Mystery Camp and is a ghost town located a few miles north of the better known Garnet Ghost Town on the Garnet-Back County Byway. Very little is known about the Coloma settlement other than records indicating that it began in 1893 and experienced high gold mining activity starting in 1896. But by the 1940s, the mines had completely run out and the boom went bust. Eventually, the place would be emptied out and be left abandoned, and this is where many locals claim that the spirits ended up taking over the place. One state historian claims that once the sun sets in Garnet, the spirits of the town historic's residents come alive. Ellen Baumler, the Montana Historical Society's resident ghost whisperer and author, wrote, quote, "At midnight, people have heard ghostly fingers striking piano keys with the music floating across the empty buildings." She continued saying, quote, "Especially during the winter months, visitors see visions and hear unearthly noises. They cause no trouble, and anyone who visits the deserted town in the dead of winter should be prepared to meet them. They hide in the shadows, laugh in the wind, and come out when you least expect them. Right in the hump of our list, we have Bear Canyon. Mashed in between Chestnut Mountain and Mount Ellis is a beautiful stretch of land known as Bear Canyon. It's best known for its scenic hiking trail and is one of the most popular sites in the Bozeman area. And as we all know, a place that is beautiful on the outside is usually hiding something very dark on the inside. According to the Bozeman Paranormal Society, Bear Canyon is a place for spirits and not for humans. Sightings of the paranormal have been recorded since the late 1800s, which is ever since we started to settle inside of that piece of land. Many people have reported seeing a little girl who attempts to lead them off of the trail and into the woods. The little girl targets women, and for those who follow this girl, they will find themselves lost in the middle of the canyon. Others claim to have seen a strange mist on Bear Canyon Road, and many have gone missing when they enter inside of this strange mist. Number 4, Moss Mansion. Built in 1903, this red brick mansion was a turn-of-the-century home. It was 3 stories tall with 28 different rooms inside. The mansion was built for the Moss family, who treated it like their pride and their joy. Eventually, they would have around 6 children and 3 servants occupying the home. Years went by and all was good, until they suffered their first devastating loss. Just 5 years after the house was built, the youngest child named Virginia passed away while she was only 6 years old. Then 40 years later, in 1947, the dad, Preston B. Moss, passed away from a heart attack. Then soon after followed the wife, who passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. Then 30 years later, another one of the sons named Melville passed away in 1984. This family ended up inhabiting the home from 1903 all the way until 1984. So best believe their deaths in the home have some sort of effect. The mansion has now been turned into a museum, and many visitors report various paranormal activity. Some include a ghostly female voice singing in the billiards room, and many staff members report a cool wind that goes up and around their bodies as they walk through the halls of the mansion. At number 3, we have Bannock Ghost Town. When gold was discovered along Grasshopper Creek in Bannock, Montana, the town went from a ghost town to a blooming community. Following the economic growth, a man named Henry Plummer became the sheriff of the town and the leader of a gang known as the Innocents. Plummer's gang is linked to over 100 murders and robberies, and during his brief time as sheriff, Plummer erected the Bannock Gallows, only to be hanged from them himself after being apprehended by a group of vigilantes. Bannock State Park still has the gallows, but many people who have visited claim that there's too much negative energy and supernatural activity in that specific area. Many claim to even see the spirit of Henry Plummer himself, as he's said to be still pleading for his life. At number 2 spot, we have Little Bighorn Battlefield. The Battle of Little Bighorn occurred on 1876 in the grassy plains of Bighorn River Valley and bluffs that exist around and along the Bighorn River. This was where General Custer and his men were brutally and completely defeated by the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. So best believe a place like this has a few restless spirits. I mean, every battlefield has one. You guys should know this. Visitors and employees have reported strange noises and even seeing full-fledged apparitions of soldiers after dark. Now, near the battlefield cemetery is where the most activity is said to happen. Many visitors claim to have been consumed by the feeling of deep sorrow and loss when they walk the cemetery grounds. And the stone house, which was built in 1894 for the cemetery's caretakers, is home to some of the most terrifying ghost stories. Some include lights aggressively flickering on and off until you leave the home, and others report seeing soldiers with missing limbs, such as missing heads or legs, indicating some of the injuries they went through during the war. At number 1 spot, we have Dude Rancher Lodge. Built in 1940 by Annabelle and Percival Goen, the Dude Rancher Lodge was originally constructed using salvaged bricks from the old St. Vincent's Hospital. The couple ran the hotel together until 1962, where Percival passed away after a car accident. Annabelle continued to run the hotel on her own, though slowly her health began to decline. She lived in an apartment at the hotel and was cared for by her dedicated staff until eventually she was moved to a nursing home. Then on February 2nd, 1983, Annabelle passed away. Since her passing, this lodge has had too many supernatural activities to count. This includes televisions turning on and off while the housekeepers are cleaning the room, knocking on the doors when no one is on the other side, the sound of children running in the halls with no children being present, and a mysterious female voice was even caught on audio tape in the basement of the hotel. If you ever wanted to stay here, then try to avoid rooms 223, 224, and especially 226, which is said to be Annabelle's grandson's room, who took his own life in that room. Coming in at number 10 spot, we have Trollwood Park. In Fargo, North Dakota is the Trollwood Park. And at first glance, it really looks like your typical park, but that should all change once you realize it was built directly on top of a cemetery and former asylum. Obviously, those who built the park knew of this and already planned to move many of the bodies away, but it's confirmed that they didn't manage to take out all of them. As briefly mentioned, the Cass County Hospital was built on top of the park around 1895, and over the years, many people were left buried with no tombstones or even a marking of their location, which is why many remain in this park to this day. One notorious ghost that haunts the area is a woman wearing a blue dress that dances around the willow trees, and other visitors here claim that the ghosts here like to call out names in order to get people to lay them to rest finally. And oddly enough, in one instance, erosion caused one of the graves to resurface, causing one visitor to trip on real human bones. Imagine you're just playing in a playground only to stumble upon century-old human bones. At the number 9 spot with the Mini Washitu. The Dakota tribe has talked about a river monster named the Mini Washitu that has terrorized the Missouri River since the beginning of time. This creature is a 7 to 8 feet tall bipedal with bison-like fur, one eye like a cyclops, and a single horn above that one eye, and it also has a very spiny backbone. This creature wasn't known for its bloodthirsty tendencies or even its power. Instead, those who have seen the creature ended up just going crazy, and the only way for them to feel any sort of peace is death. One man wrote about this creature saying that he spotted it upstream in the Missouri River. He said it was red in color with hair like buffalo, but when he saw it, everything went dark. And the last thing he wrote was that he was walking home, but when he arrived, he lost all sort of reason and passed away in a couple of minutes. Kinda sounds like the Netflix movie Bird Box, doesn't it? So best to keep your blindfolds with you in North Dakota. At a number 8 spot, we have the Stairway to Hell. Yup, if you're looking for a direct way to hell, this place might be for you. Jokes aside, located in Tegas, North Dakota is what many claim to be the Stairway to Hell. And with a claim like that, there must be something very terrifying about it. The town of Tegas is now completely abandoned, but when it opened up in the early 1900s, some crazy things happened here. There were rumors of an old Lutheran church that specialized in satanic worship, and some even claim that they did real human sacrifices here. Although the location of the church is not exactly known, what is known that it has been partially burned down, but there is still some who claim to have found it. They say the church is marked with an upside down cross at the front, and apparently everyone who has come down to the basement has never come back up. Now it has claimed so many lives that people started to think it was a stairway to hell. But hey, I guess the only way to find out about this is to walk it down yourself. Are you interested? At number 7 spot, we're the Sandhaven Sanatorium. The Sandhaven Sanatorium, otherwise known as a Sanatorium of Death, was built in 1911, and ever since, it has been a hot spot for paranormal investigators due to the dark history attached to the place. When the place was active, much of it was used to treat those with tuberculosis, and the issue is that the cure didn't come until 1946, which gave around 30 years of deaths due to this illness. Eventually, the need for the sanatorium died down, and the place ended up closing in 1989. After being repurchased, it was found that over 1,000 people passed away inside of the sanatorium, with the majority of them being in unmarked graves. To make matters worse, many satanic worshippers has made their way here to perform rituals using pentagrams and even sacrifice. Eventually, ghost adventurers made their way here as well, and even spoke with another spirit inside of the property. Others believe that patients of this place were badly mistreated, which could give more reason to all these hauntings. At a number 6 spot, we have Devil's Lake. When you get a name like this, you can't be surprised if anything bad happens to you here. The thing most people worry about when they step foot into this water is the Devil's Lake monster. The legend goes that centuries ago, many Siletz Indians vanished into the lake after their vessel was pulled down by giant tentacles. When the first Christian missionaries arrived in the Lincoln City area, local Native Americans told them of an octopus-like creature that appeared during periods of long drought. They even host a festival every single year for this creature, and back in those days, they used to sacrifice various animals into the lake. But obviously that's not done now. But as with any other sea monster, this creature still remains a huge mystery because in some accounts, people describe it as a Loch Ness Monster lookalike, but in others, people lay claim that it resembles a large giant octopus or something like the Kraken. In the Humphrey list, we have White Lady Lane. Sometime in the early 20th century in the town of Walhalla, there was a 16-year-old girl named Anna Story who met with a much older man named Samuel Khalil, who was out selling items in the marketplace. As soon as Samuel saw Anna, he fell deeply in love and went straight to the mother to ask for permission to be with her daughter. Since there was a huge age gap and the fact that the daughter was only 16 years old, the mother denied any sort of romantic romantic relationship. However, she made an offer, which was to allow her to use all of Sam's items, and in a year's time, she would grant him the permission he wanted. Samuel agreed and gave the mother much of his valuable items. Then we fast forward a year, and Samuel comes back to the town of Valhalla to settle his deal and get the daughter. However, when he confronted Anna's mother, she still denied and wouldn't even give back the items she borrowed. So in a rage, Samuel pushed the mother aside and took the daughter, but there was an immediate struggle. So he grabbed his firearm, shot Anna point blank, killing her immediately. Sam would then try to end his own life and the mother's, but was unsuccessful and was later arrested. Now locals claim that Anna's spirit can be found on White Lady Lane, wearing the same white nightgown the night she was murdered. At number 4 spot, we have Chateau de Moore. The Chateau de Moore in Medora, North Dakota is a very historical site here. First, it was built by Marquis de Moore back in 1883 for a hunting lodge. He, his wife Medora, and their children lived in the house for many years with no issues, until one day Medora decided to go out traveling and never ended up returning back. Ever since that occasion, the family was terrorized by her spirit to the point when they had to move out of the hunting lodge altogether. And you can still visit the home, and much of the family's belongings are still found inside, which led many people to believe that Medora's spirit is still inside the home as well. This is because various visitors claim that a voice is telling them to get out of the house, while others recall that the house is filled with all sorts of unexplained cold spots. At a number 3 spot, we have the Stack Monster. In Bismarck, North Dakota lies the infamous Liberty Memorial Building. It was originally built in 1924 and is the oldest building on the Capitol grounds. More specifically, the library inside of the building is where many have had strange occurrences. This is because it's said that the library is haunted by a creature known as the Stack Monster. This monster would flicker lights, push people into harm's way, and overnight workers have claimed to hear very loud footsteps in the library when no one else is around. And these hauntings aren't specific to humans only. One time, the former director of the State Historical Society came into the library with his dog, only to see his dog's hair stand up and it couldn't stop barking at a dark section of the library. At a number 2 spot, we have the NDSU campus. 2 NDSU residence halls are said to be haunted by different spirits. First, we have the ghost of a man who hung himself on a heating pipe within Sarah's Hall. As well, students have mentioned everything from lights going out on entire levels to sensing an odd presence nearby. The 2 areas with the most paranormal activity here are the basement and the 3rd floor. When people enter the basement of the Sarah's Hall, there have been numerous accounts of people who feel a strange feeling of panic and a triggering fight or flight response when they enter. On the other end, we have the Menard Hall, and legend states that one morning after a school dance, a janitor found the bodies of 2 students in the dance room. The case ended up going cold, which is kinda ironic since students who enter this hall report that there are far too many cold spots for it to be considered normal. At number 1 spot, we have the Riverside Cemetery. Opening in 1878, this cemetery, located alongside the Red River in South Fargo, is the largest and oldest cemetery in North Dakota. And this place is possibly the only cemetery where you may hear voices coming from the tombstones. As the number of paranormal occurrences increased at the cemetery, ghost hunters came in and have apparently recorded what sounds like knocking near the doors to several mausoleums. Other visitors have reported that they've seen bizarre, unexplained mist, orbs, and even different strange anomalies that appeared in photos and videos of the area. So if you ever want to see it, go search for a YouTube video of this place and you probably will see why it's haunted.
Starting out this countdown at number 10, Spirit Lake origins. Spirit Lake's name is said to be no mystery to those who live in Idaho. The story goes that years ago, a young Native American woman began a relationship with a brave man from a rival tribe. Unable to wed but determined to preserve their doomed love, the two tied their wrists together in symbolic marriage and jumped from a cliff into the lake where others tend to go to take their lives. It's said that on the moonlit nights you can see their shadowy spirits drifting across the lake in a phantom canoe, while mournful sounds fill the air as the Indian lovers seek release from their watery grave. Now here at number 9, Coyote and the Seven Devils. The Seven Devils form a portion of the Idaho-Oregon border, as well as line the most treasured river canyon called Hell's Canyon. The Nez Perce in particular had origin stories for nearly every feature of Idaho's diverse landscape, and the story of the Seven Devils is a unique one. Many years ago, there were 7 child-eating giant brothers who lived on the horizon. The people were terrified of these giants. They sent word to Coyote to help them defeat the giants and save their children. Coyote knew he couldn't battle 7 giants at once, so he dug massive holes in the earth and filled them with boiling liquid. As the giants were traveling east to snatch more children, they tripped into the holes and were trapped. Coyote was then able to transform the giants into stone, and he opened up a canyon at their feet to keep them from ever reaching the villages again. Coming in at number 8, Idaho doesn't exist. According to dozens of web pages which have genuinely called into question the very existence of Idaho as a physical location, the gem state simply doesn't exist, people say. People say it's down to 3 premises. Do you know anybody from Idaho? Have you ever been to Idaho? Do you know anyone anyone who's ever been to Idaho? For most, the answer is no. Therefore, that's why people say Idaho doesn't exist. In fact, the general consensus is that Idaho was put on the map because cartographers needed a barrier to separate Utah from Canada and protect Montana from Washington, or vice versa. One explanation is that Idaho is a government-operated mind control vacuum. Another theory is that Idaho exists, but only as a state of mind. The whole debacle stirs up an abundance of very real philosophical arguments, but according to conspiracy logic, if you feel like you're living in Idaho right now, odds are it is simply the result of other conspiracies at work. Now personally, I don't believe this one, but there are some people who really full-heartedly believe it. Here at number 7, Charlie. The legend of Charlie the lake monster was first recorded in the early 1920s when railroad workers in McCall saw something unexplainable. In McCall, locals will tell you the tale of this creature. Charlie has been known as Slimy Slim and the Twilight Dragon of Payette Lake. Over the years, this serpent-like creature with a dragon head has made many appearances. Most think it's a log before it rises up to reveal its head. The last documented sighting came in 2002, but in 1954, the Payette Lake Star newspaper held a contest challenging readers to come up with a name for this elusive creature. The winner was Leigh Isle Henneferturi of Springfield, who came up with the name Charlie. Charlie continued to be spotted over the years, but it has been seen less and less frequently. It is reported to be between 10 and 50 feet long, brownish green, having a shell, and travels in serpent-like waves, rising and falling out of the water. But this gentle beast garners nothing but love from locals, who can't seem to recall an incident when Charlie attacked any of the lakeside city's residents. Very much like the Loch Ness Monster, except the Loch Ness Monster doesn't get as much love, and it seems like every place has its own version of a monster in a body of water. Number 6, Idaho is purposely drugging its residences. In 1947, it's said that Lewiston began adding fluoride into its water, as did the vast majority of United States cities, a practice which still exists today. Many suspected, however, that the addition of fluoride, which is approved as an easy way to cut down on widespread tooth decay, was in fact a large-scale attempt to underhandedly medicate Idaho's citizens, as well as a means of covering up the drastic lack of dental care provided for the state's working people who were poor. The dramatic decrease in childhood cavity levels recorded by 1950 supported the practice as a whole, but to this day, fluoride is still majorly opposed for a variety of reasons, including links to cancer and bone loss. Halfway at number 5, Lake Pend. This deep ocean-like lake in northern Idaho is said to be the perfect place for a monstrous beast to reside. It is said to be large, gray, and prehistoric in shape and size. Locals claim he is an unknown remnant of the Jurassic era that has managed to survive extinction, against all odds. Up until this point, the creature has remained a peaceful part of local lore, although many say that sightings of the sea creature were merely glimpses of Naval Training Station's top-secret submarine and technological testing. Coming in at number 4, Civic Theater. Before this building housed the Lewiston Civic Theater, it was a Methodist church built in 1904. In 1972, it became a theater, and in 1982, 2 women and 1 man all mysteriously disappeared from the theater on the same night. Both women were found unfortunately deceased off of the property 2 years later, suspected to be victims of a homicide. The man, however, was never found, and his mystery remains unsolved. Whether or not these 3 people haunt the building, there have been numerous sightings of other ghosts in the theater. Actors and theatergoers have seen apparitions of a red-haired man, a spectacled presence in the mailroom, and an elderly gentleman in the doorway. A ghost of a director has been seen in the balcony, and apparently a bride weaves herself through the seats. Here at number 3, Massacre Rocks Water Babies. This one comes from Pocatello, where you can hear the crying of babies late at night if you sit by the river alone in the dark. Many believe that it's the sound of babies that mothers were forced to take the lives of during a famine rather than watch them starve till they passed away. Some think that these babies grew gills and learned to survive. Depending on the story you hear, a water baby is said to be a spirit or monster traditionally seen as a Native American bred urban legend of small childlike creatures living in the waters of reservations around the western United States. It is rumored that they are tricksters whose main goal is to take the lives of others. Coming in at number 2, the Murder House. The Murder House of Boys was the site of the vicious passing of Preston Murr more than 30 years ago. After an argument broke out in the basement of the house between Murr and 2 men, Murr was shot and then hacked into pieces that were dumped 100 miles away from Brownlee Reservoir. His body parts surfaced and led investigators back to the house, which is allegedly still haunted today. Many former residents and visitors of the house have said that the basement has a very creepy feeling. Even footsteps from an invisible person have been heard. There are also legends about the house that say bloodstains appear appear and then disappear, and a woman in old-fashioned clothing has been seen looking out the window.
Now the rumor is that this 21-year-old man will forever haunt this home, and even non-believers believe it's created an urban legend.
Living there, I really don't feel that I was never afraid or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories. I mean, everybody's convinced that it is.
Now here at our #1 spot, the Phantom Jogger of Canyon Hill. At Cadwell's Canyon Hill Cemetery, it's said that the ghosts don't like when you stare at their graves late at night. According to the legend, if you park between the two trees across the street from the entrance at midnight, you will see something quite terrifying. Make sure to turn your lights off though, so you can see the legless jogger when she knocks on your window. After you've completely freaked out and almost totally lost your mind, she leaves just as quickly as she came. Someone has said that they parked in this spot to investigate, but they did it at noon, so it wasn't very dark. They said they didn't see any ghosts, but that it was still very creepy.